Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
The rain was hitting the windshield with such fierceness that Franklin involuntarily flinched at each blow. It was so good that it would break the glass. Not a cheerful picture of natural madness was supplemented by the inner tension that had been accumulating for 3 months. The man desperately wanted to get rid of stress, but he did not know what in this situation would have the greatest effect: a large portion of strong drink or escape to some secluded place. His intuition told him the right thing to do. Franklin, while you're looking for that place, you're gonna lose your mind. That's why it's a good time to get drunk as hell. There's a reason scientists say that many geniuses have brilliant thoughts when they're in a bad state of mind. The head of Franklin Cosmetics is used to listening to his inner voice, trying to pay less attention to the heavenly flood. He started the car and drove out of the parking lot. And for the second one, I was satisfied with the decision. In this weather, Phil only drink vodka. The man grinned sadly at his house and muttered. And the occasion was perfect. Or rather to say, you can't think of a worse one. Franklin thought for the first time today that fate was mocking him. One setback after another, and he had no time to dodge the blows. The thought flashed through my mind again. It's as if someone had put a curse on me on purpose. The man immediately pushed the thought away, because he did not believe in Moldavian nonsense, but he could not explain the succession of business failures either. There was no one to consult on this issue either. Therefore, the businessman decided that there was nothing better than to get drunk. In general, of course, there were, at first thoughts that it was all grandmother. The first wives about her said all sorts of things. But then he found out that she was dead and scolded himself. How can you believe in all kinds of damn things? Well, it's something else. It's more like a streak that's gone on too long. It's got to end sometime. That's usually the way it goes. Franklin had never abused hard liquor, but he knew that it helped to clear his brain of unnecessary junk. He moved slowly down the street, trying to make out familiar landmarks through the veil of rain. Finally, the sign of a beer bar with the promising name Jolly Carp appeared in his field of vision. The logo of this party establishment contained not only letters, but also the image of a huge fish with a beaming smile. When Frank first graced the election with his presence, he asked the receptionist whether those who had come up with such a stunning advertisement with the fish must have taken a hefty dose themselves. Baffled by the receptionists, asked the client, "What made you think that?" Franklin blurted it out without thinking about the consequences. Yes, because a sober person is unlikely to come up with the idea of depicting fish of obscure breeds with a smile on his face. Long-haired man looked resentfully at the status visitor and corrected the snout of fish is not a muzzle, but snouts. That's what biologists have decided to call that part. Franklin did not like to be corrected. He immediately decided to flaunt his knowledge and their theologians. If you dig that deep, these are the people who study fish. The manager couldn't object because it wasn't in his interest to scare away customers. After that incident, Franklin had several more times visited the bar, which, by the way, served very good quality beer. Today he decided to come here for an hour. The parking lot was about 100 meters from the bar, and the man had to cover this distance in the pouring rain because he forgot to take an umbrella and his suit was soaked through in less than a minute. Franklin, out of habit, raised his eyes upward to capture his reverence for the owner of the establishment. "Hello to you and your tassel, Mr. Karras." But the always cheerful fish this time greeted him with a sinister smile. Frank, by her own mustache, and quickly averted his gaze. "I definitely need to get very drunk, or I'll bite everyone." He went down the stairs, where he was greeted with a knowing smile by the familiar receptionist. "Mr. Franklin, what an unexpected surprise, Sam." That's what all the visitors called the receptionist, started fussing over a customer. This customer, of course, was not the best in terms of character, but he always gave good tips. Sam was ready to turn himself inside out for money. Money doesn't smell at all. It doesn't matter how it comes, as long as it's there. And he can smile once in a while. Bend a little, Speak a little, in a way that pleases the client. Yes, you're soaked to the skin. Give me your jacket. We'll have it dry in no time. Frank threw off the top of his suit. Thank you, Sam. It's always a pleasure to come in this weather. You feel right at home here. Snatched by the praise, the receptionist withdrew, but reappeared a couple minutes later. He was about to offer the regulars a couple of new items on the menu. But Franklin made an emphatic hand gesture. Sam, I'm not in the mood for a tasting tonight. I'm ready to tear everyone apart, so I'd better take a classic rough to restore my composure. The manager's out of town, and I hear you. I'll send a waiter right over. Followed by the same careless gesture. I don't want to make a fuss. Be a friend. You bring the double portion yourself. Of course, if such a favor is not burdensome for you. The administrator turned off her eyes and became at this moment very similar to the carp pictured above the entrance. No, it is not difficult for me, even pleasant, to fulfill the request of our regular customer. But you, Mr. Franklin, as I noticed, are driving. Frank clapped the man on the shoulder. So you're still turning out your boy, keeping tabs on the customers. That's commendable. But you don't have to worry about me, Sam, because I never drive drunk. If I'm completely wasted, you can call me a cab. Sam, a full-chested drink up front. Of course, Mr. Franklin, whatever you want. The receptionist disappeared again behind the partition separating the kitchen block from the lounge, and soon returned with a tray on which he majestically gave a glass of almost liter containers. With a solemn look, the maitre d' pronounced our specialty, straight from the fridge, clammed up in his eyes. Franklin took one big sip. It tasted amazing. The receptionist departed with a smile. Franklin took another pithy sip. He sat for a few minutes, covering his eyes and enjoying the pleasant book that was quickly flowing down his body. The men physically felt the anxiety loosen its grip. The realization became clearer with each passing second. Someone unseen within him distinctly said to Franklin, "Perhaps the causes of your troubles are in your surroundings. You've forgotten that even the people closest to you can set you up. In the last few years, you've become very self-confident in general, and that's extremely dangerous for business." Franklin concentrated on that inner voice and didn't notice a local man with a hint of baldness approaching his table. Permission. Frank snapped out of a pleasant state of weightlessness and involuntarily looked at the stranger. "Excuse me, what did you say?" The stout man didn't even look embarrassed. "I thought you wouldn't mind if I landed at your table. It's so bad out, and it's dry and quiet in here." Franklin wanted to tell the impertinent man that the room was full of empty tables, but he beat him to it. "I noticed you right away, Mr. Franklin. You sat with such an expression on your face, as if you were sent into space without your consent. And you've decided to become a crewman, too." "Not exactly. I didn't just want to give you a little backup." The man accepted a mug of beer from the waiter, then carefully wiped his hands with a napkin. Only then did he properly introduce himself as Ethan the lawyer. Franklin shook the outstretched hand, but did not answer anything. Ethan took this silence as a sign of approval and continued, "Actually, I'm a corporate lawyer, and I could be useful to you." Franklin looked into the smug face of his interlocutor. How much Ethan, and committed his glass, and took up his napkin again. "I think we can agree on a price." Franklin was beginning to be annoyed by this unknown lawyer. "Ethan, tell me honestly, who sent you? You don't think I'm naive enough to believe the fairy tale that you just happened to be in this bar? It's in this kind of bad weather." Ethan nasty, hey. "You should be an investigator, not the CEO of a cosmetics company. You scanned me right through. I can't get away with it now. But you're right. I won't deny that I'm here for a reason. The fact is, your wife Maria asked me to help. I've had time to study your problem, and I want to tell you that." Franklin abruptly cut the lawyer off. "For a handsome fee, I can weave my way out of anything. Ethan, I'm not new in business, and I understand perfectly well that my situation has practically no positive way out. The lawyer's got it on the table, but hope dies last. And if Mr. Ethan, I will not throw away money on a hopeless venture, especially the company is currently stuck on the shoals. But Frank the businessman stood up, making it clear that the conversation was over. If I need your help, I will definitely find you. All the best to you. Franklin passed by, pulled him into a string by the receptionist, forgetting to tip him. The businessman was again overwhelmed with the most negative emotions. Already on the way out, he remembered about his jacket and returned to the hall. Sam silently handed him the items of clothing and received for the obliging money bonus. The maitre d' bowed, and with the practiced movement of a magician, slipped the bill into his pocket. "Mr. Franklin, would you like to call a cab?" Franklin grumbled grudgingly. "No need. I'll get there in my car." Sam said nothing and glanced at the table where the glass was almost full. The cosmetics firm owner's casual companion had also disappeared unnoticed, leaving a few small banknotes on the table. The celestial bacchanalia was gradually decreasing, and only small rains were monotonously pounding on the sidewalk. Franklin's mood continued to sour, and he was no longer trying to restrain himself. When Kevin ran out into the hallway and threw himself on his neck, he released himself from his son's embrace rather roughly. "Kevin, you almost knocked me over. See, Daddy's tired." The 8-year-old grudgingly muttered, "Dad, you need to go to the hospital and have the doctor check you out. You're always angry and tired. I wanted to have a serious talk with you." The man tried to correct his mistake. "Son, we'll definitely talk, but only a little later. Where's Mom?" Kevin waved his hand toward the kitchen without words and lowered his head, which meant an extreme degree of resentment. He wandered into the nursery. The head of the family walked in the direction indicated, and the tension reached the maximum mark. At the moment when Maria said with a smile, "You are so early today, and I'm still with dinner," there was nothing provocative in the woman's tone. But Franklin got angry. "How nice we say, like a caring bird. Only your concern for Maria is getting on my nerves. Why did you send that idiot to me?" Tears glistened in the woman's eyes, but her voice didn't waver. "Why did you attack me from the doorstep? Explain things to me like a human being. What happened?" The wife's calmness added another spoonful of oil to the fire of the family scandal. "Don't play the innocent. Why did you send that stupid lawyer to me?" Marina adopted a defensive posture. The noisemaker in her hand looked like a symbol of feminine determination. "If you haven't forgotten, dear, I also work in the company you head, so I have every right to make decisions to save our common child." The man even jumped in the seat of our common. "I heard you. Since when did Franklin Cosmetics become your property?" Such a violent reaction of the woman clearly did not expect. She started gulping for air. "But I'm your wife, so I have the right." Franklin cut her off halfway through. "That doesn't mean anything. I have to tell you that your status gives you absolutely no benefit. You're nothing, and I'm nothing. And I'm the only one who can make decisions. Of course, as a board member, you can make suggestions, but you realize it's a conditional structure because I make the final decision." We took our frustrations out on the wife. Franklin has already calmly said, "And from now on, I'm going to ask you very nicely. Don't poke your nose where you're not wanted." It was said so harshly that Maria could no longer hold back her tears. She cried and shouted, "All right, I won't say another word. But I want to remind you, Franklin, that once, as you believe, your company was saved precisely because of my intervention. Too bad you have such a short memory." Franklin had never seen Maria in such a lost state. Some distant string twitched in his heart, and he approached his wife, trying to embrace her. But the muzzle pushed him away. "Don't touch me. You think only of yourself and your ambition. Don't you care for the rest of us? I've been told how ugly you were to Lucy by your first wife. I was naive, believing only your stories. I thought it was all people talking about you out of jealousy. Now I realize it was you who was the stumbling block." Franklin listened to his wife, but could say nothing against her, because in her desperate monologue, he heard the answer to the question that had long tormented him. What was the reason for his chronic failures? Meanwhile, the woman continued, but more calmly. "You, Franklin, are used to command. but the responsibility is always shifted to someone else's shoulders. That's what happened when you got involved with the crooks last year, who supplied us with a substandard substance, and the whole batch went bad. In case you've forgotten, that was a multi-million-dollar loss. It would seem that a sensible person should draw conclusions after such a serious mistake. But you jumped into a new adventure. You never think about anyone but yourself. You don't care about the people on the street. If the company goes under the hammer, Frank will clench his fists and growl. I'm sure we'll pay up. We just have to come up with something workable, but unconventional. The woman glared angrily. You sit there and think, and I'll wash my hands of it. In fact, I'm convinced that this time the company will not be able to swim out. Sorry, my dear husband, but I really look at the current situation and see that your firm is going down. Only a miracle can save it. That's the reason I turned to Ethan. But since you don't like my intervention, I haven't lifted a finger. Marina, with her head held high, headed for the exit for a second, stopped at the door, and don't you dare yell at me ever again. Man, heard the wife deliberately loudly called her son and ordered him, Kevin, get ready to go to Grandma's house for a visit. Daddy needs to get some rest and get his nerves in order. Soon the front door slammed, and he was left alone with his unhappy thoughts. Quarrels with his wife had happened before, but in the last year and a half they had become more frequent, which annoyed Franklin greatly. The same situation was in the last years of his previous marriage, so he could not understand what women wanted from him and why they are always dissatisfied with everything. Pondering over this problem, the man made himself an omelet and ate dinner without appetite. He thought that Maria had become too bold, and it was time for her to be restrained. And then Lucy, his first wife, came to mind again, because he had decided to do the same procedure with her. But always docile. Women catch his every word. Suddenly, she disagreed. Clearly, Franklin could not forgive her for such an act of defiance. The recollection brought back unpleasant thoughts. Franklin threw the plate into the sink with irritation. He wanted to find solace near the television, but the image of his first wife made it impossible to concentrate on the plot of a thrilling action movie. What the hell is this? I think it's a bad omen. Damn stress. The man again went to the kitchen and poured himself a full shot of vodka. Anxious visions immediately disappeared, and Franklin, to consolidate the effect, poured another half shot of hot liquid spilled over the faithful. And he, as recently in the bar, felt incredible lightness. Folk remedies are better than pills. Franklin said this optimistically and put the mortgage bottle back in the refrigerator. He went back to the television and began clicking the remote control buttons without the same irritation. The booze had weakened his body so much that Franklin didn't notice that he had fallen asleep. All night he dreamed. Lucy. But this night vision caused nostalgia because irrevocably lost to him time when he was really happy. Insistent alarm clock signals forced Franklin to open his eyes to those feelings that he again experienced in the dream. Did not leave the man, and all day long he suddenly irresistibly wanted to talk to his father, and he even intuitively reached for the phone, but immediately pulled his hand away from the device. What is this obsession? I'm definitely not myself. After all, Dad died 3 years ago. Carl was widowed early and raised his only son by himself. He was a renowned scientist in plant genetics. But despite his high status, he preferred simplicity and modesty in everyday life. He also tried to instill in his son an ascetic lifestyle. Franklin, remember that domestic comfort and other excesses make a person addicted. Up to a time, the guy accepted these rules and even tried to imitate his father. But in adolescence, everything changed, and he reminded his father every chance he got. Dad, I do not want to deliberately deprive myself of an interesting life. Small pleasures don't spoil a man. How do you say? They add to his existence, and I don't want to deny myself that. Carl tried to change his son's mind for a while, but then he gave up. He didn't have the time to indoctrinate his little boy with life-tested truths. After all, The elder Franklin combined scientific activity and teaching his favorite subject. The professor was often invited to the educational institutions of neighboring countries to give lectures, and he almost never refused such events. Franklin many times tried to remind his father that such a strenuous rhythm of work is dangerous to his health, to which Carl philosophically answered his son, "My life itself is dangerous, so I see no point in limiting myself, because what is destined to happen cannot be avoided anyway." That's how son and father lived, trying to stay out of each other's way. But everything changed with the arrival of Lucy. At one of his visiting lectures, Carl met a student who amazed him with her broad knowledge of biology. Emotions were bursting out of the professor's soul, as there was no one but his son in the house. He shared his joy with him. "Franklin, I never imagined that our land gives birth to such bright talents. You know, the other day I was giving a lecture at the academy and had the good fortune to meet an amazing girl. Imagine, she had me, a professor, under her belt in every sense of the word." Franklin asked for the sake of propriety, "Who's the girl?" Carl came to life. At first glance, a girl of what 1,000. She came from a small district center. Since childhood, she's been interested in floriculture. She entered the biotechnology department at the academy on the dictates of her heart. After graduation, she's going to go into agribusiness. Franklin could not hide his surprise for a girl, of course, an unusual hobby. "But father, you yourself know very well that in youth everyone makes grandiose plans." And then the professor interrupted his son unequal all by himself. "You're lazy. I've already come to terms with it. That girl has a fountain of ideas filling out of her." Amazing ideas. The father's delight was a painful blow to Franklin's ego. The son barely managed to interrupt the flow of his father's eloquence. "Dad, stop. You know how first impressions are often deceptive." The professor waved his hands. "No, son, my gut has never failed me yet. This girl definitely has a business sense. It just needs to be channeled into a fruitful direction. Father, you've intrigued me enough to make me want to meet this new Eliza Doolittle." Carl froze, but his confusion lasted only a few seconds. "You shouldn't say that, Franklin. You're not Henry Higgins to play the aristocrat either." "Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't choose the right example. But I really want to meet this girl. You described her so vividly," the elder Franklin. "I was flattered by the praise and agreed right away. All right, I'll arrange for you to meet her. But Franklin, I'm warning you, no more of that Franklin stuff." Franklin crossed his arms over his chest. "Father, I swear I'll behave like a true gentleman." At that time, Franklin could not have thought that meeting a pretty provincial girl would change his life dramatically, although the girl could not be called a beauty. But the charm in her was in excess. From Lucy emanated so much energy that once Franklin jokingly said, "Lucy, you can connect to charge phones and other electronics." The girl grinned. "You're not alone in that observation. When I was very young, my grandfather used to tell his fellow villagers that I was a battery-powered robot. Your grandfather has a great sense of humor. Franklin, you wouldn't believe it, but they believed him. But the locals interpreted the joke in their own way. They spread rumors that Herb's granddaughter's heart wasn't real, but a motor. Everyone felt sorry for me and gave me candy. I wish Grandpa was gone. But we often go to the village, so Grandpa's house is not empty." Franklin found this story funny. "I've never been to the village. Are there really such naive people there?" "No, they're just ordinary people. And the craving for rumors is an indispensable element that saves you from boredom." Just a few days with Lucy didn't go unnoticed by Franklin. After all, in addition to positive energy, the favorite of the professor distinguished herself and a sharp mind. One day the girl confessed to him, "Franklin, if I had a different amount of money, I would open a cosmetics company." The guy was surprised, "But you don't know anything about it." Lucy laughed. "I am profoundly mistaken, because at the heart of every cream elk or shampoo, plant extract, by the way, is a profitable direction, because half of humanity is women." The young man immediately caught on to the idea. "Lucy, there's something in what you say. Franklin could not find the right word for a long time, but he spit on this trifle and moved on to the next point. By the way, many men are also not strangers to the pursuit of beauty. Personally, I'm very interested in your idea. Tell me, what would you call your company? After all, it is an essential part of the brand. Lucy grinned with geniality. Look how promising Franklin Cosmetics or Franklin Youth sounds. That's just me thinking off the top of my head. It's the first thing that came to mind. Franklin's already pictured himself in a future presentation. This picture inspired him so much that he took the girl in his arms and danced with her. Lucy, you, my fairy, are a true enchantress. The irrepressible joy of the young man was explained by the fact that he still could not find his place in the sun. After graduating from the Institute of Chemistry and Technology, the professor's son worked only a year in his specialty. Franklin did not want to work for the state from the beginning. 2 attempts to start his own business ended in complete failure. Meeting Lucy breathed new hope into him, and he decided to keep the girl to himself for a higher purpose. He proposed to her. Although Lucy understood perfectly well that the young man does not have tender feelings for her, she agreed to become his wife. Their union turned out to be successful both in life and in business. But the period of prosperity lasted until Franklin one day did not meet Maria. Lucy was losing badly in appearance against the background of a sophisticated rival who had perfect body shapes. In fact, Franklin's main irritating factor was his wife's fullness. Lucy, and before marriage, was not thin. And after the birth of a daughter, Cindy, and even kinder, Franklin humiliated his wife in every possible way. Did not hesitate to compare her to a famous animal. One insatiable fall day, a loving husband told Lucy, "I can no longer live with you because I met a woman with whom it is not a shame to appear in decent society." This confession was unexpected for the young woman, and she did not even immediately realize what had happened. "Franklin, that was a bad joke. I could be offended." My husband sarcastically remarked, "I don't give a damn about your resentments for a long time. You're making a fool of yourself. A village in a word. Let's not get into details. Let's just go our separate ways." But I can't, and I don't want to. I put everything into this company. Franklin, you laughed. Yes, it's my credit and my money. If it weren't for me, your worthless ideas would be lost for lack of demand. Franklin had a lot of nasty things to say to his wife. He concluded his speech by asking her to clean up the place as soon as possible. Now the man was horrified to think of the act, and he burst out involuntarily. "Yeah, buddy, you were a scumbag. How else can you call a man who threw his wife and little daughter out the door?" It didn't surprise him that it was the first time he'd thought of his daughter in 10 years. More than anything else, the businessman was concerned about the fact that March, for whose sake he threw out his first wife, today supported not him and the former rival. Men quietly said yes. Female solidarity is a great power. After a moment's thought, he threw a question into the void. "I wonder where Lucy is now. Probably somewhere in the countryside, scrounging for food." Frank was not wrong about one thing. His first wife had indeed settled in a small Belarusian village. True, she did not study, as Franklin thought, but lived and worked there for her own pleasure. That morning at summer sunset, Lucy was going to cook oatmeal porridge for 2 people according to tradition, but found that there was no beggar's molasses of salt in the house. Cindy sat at the table waiting for breakfast, but realized from the confused expression on her mother's face that the morning meal had been postponed until later in the day. The girl tossed her spoon with irritation. "Mom, are we out of something again?" The woman smiled at her daughter. "You guessed it. And that this time salt, sugar, milk, cereal." Cindy listed gastronomic nominations and did not even try to hide her displeasure. Lucy became guilty. "No salt. It was there yesterday, but today it's gone. I've been distracted lately." Cindy had a caustic remark. "The mice must have eaten all the salt. They love salt. They just can't live without it." The girl stood up abruptly from the table, and the table toppled to the floor with a clatter. Lucy shuddered. "Cindy, would you mind holding your grudge? It's no big deal. It's a 2-minute walk to the store. You run and get the salt. And we're together." The 15-year-old selfishly curled his lips in disdain. "Why me, Mom? Is that your fault? It's up to you to fix it. Everyone's used to it." "Cindy, run over there. Cindy, bring it." Her daughter accompanied her private speech with facial expressions and gestures that gave her mother a fit of laughter. "My girl, that's the way it is. You're the youngest in the family, and you're the one who has to run these errands." Cindy almost screamed. "I don't want to be the errand girl. Maybe I have plans of my own." The girl's voice became a little bit more serious. Lucy peacefully said, "Okay, if it's so difficult for you to run to the village shop, I'll go myself. And there's no need to get hysterical over such a trifle." Cindy snapped at her. "Mommy, it's not because of me, but because of your fault that all the fuss has broken out. Any normal housewife knows which products she has in the house and which ones are running out." And you mother laughingly interrupted her daughter. "Even if it is not a normal hostess, but it is also here is not a stranger. You could have followed the food supplies, seeing that your mother is closing. I have so much to do. I don't have time to breathe." Cindy remained silent, stepping her eyebrows together. Lucy decided that this was a good time to do some parenting. "I don't like you talking all day long. You could help me at least once in a while. I don't demand much from you." The girl grimaced again, interrupted her mother. "No, Mommy, you can't lure me into that trap. Not your plantation. That's where it stands." Cindy ran her hand over her throat, and for added effect, he flicked his tongue. "And I'm not going to follow your example, Mom. This means that our family succession is impossible. So this option is completely off the table." The woman looked at her daughter fondly. "Do you look like a wet Borgia now?" Cindy flashed his eyes angrily. "Thank you for not comparing me to a worm or a frog, but you can say whatever you want, and I still won't change my attitude to your business." The girl made quotation marks with her fingers and headed for the entrance. But her mother caught her by the arm. "My daughter, you can change your plans 100 times, if you have any. I'm not going to force you. But as a mother, I have a right to know what your plans are. Admit it. Where do you want to put your energy?" The girl rounded her eyes and beautiful, spreading her arms as if she wanted to cover the whole universe. "Mom, I dream of becoming a model. After all, you will not deny that for this I have all the data and face and figure." Cindy threw her mother a glance, but Lucy answered the Harris in an admonishing tone. "Besides what you named, it's also good to have a brain in your head. The professional life of models is very short, 10 years at most. And then there's no 100% guarantee you'll get selected. There are plenty of pretty girls out there. That's why there's so much competition in the modeling business." Apparently, Cindy was puzzled by her mother's warning. She thought for about a minute and then said cheerfully, "Bullshit. If I don't sneak into modeling, I'm going to go into acting. Even the teachers at school tell me that with my looks I'll be able to be on stage or on the catwalk." Lucy sighed heavily. "You've got your head full of nonsense." The girl exclaimed, "Mom, but you do not want me to spend my life stuck in this village. What's wrong with our village?" "Everything. Everything here is stupid, and the people are stupid and dull. If you knew what they were saying about you, you would have run away from here a long time ago." Lucy grinned. "I know my bones are always going through the motions, but I haven't paid attention to it in a long time. And about the Cindy people, I want to tell you that you still have to grow and grow to reach their level. And don't use that kind of language in front of me." A blush broke out on the girl's cheeks, and she breathed heavily. Lucy decided to further exasperate her daughter. "What are you flaring your nostrils like a pack mare? You don't like criticism. Get used to it. You'll meet other things in life." Cindy was all, "Get it, get it, get it, get it, get it, get it. How annoying is that?" And out the door. Lucy put her daughter's overturned table in its place and sank down tiredly on it, all in her father, as powerful and self-assured. The woman very rarely remembered her husband, who had practically kicked her out of the house along with her young daughter. But lately, Cindy had so often demonstrated not the best sides of her character that the comparison of her with her father came off her tongue. Maybe she'll grow out of it. After all, I too was desperate at that age, arguing with my parents and grandfather. And then he settled down. Although my life can hardly serve as an example, and I do not wish my daughter such a fate, this short monologue helped to put my nerves in order. The woman once again, for some reason, looked in the cupboard where the spices were stored. I'll have to go for salt myself. I'll go to the plot after lunch, when the heat dies down a little. Despite the tangible approach of fall, the last days of August were tropical heat, so Lucy added to her modest closet stylish hats with huge brim. She barely glanced in the mirror and half-heartedly characterized her outfit. Of course, a dress and a hat was not a good combination. Yes, for a trip to the village shop, this outfit would do. The woman took her straw bag, with which she always went to the store, and headed in the direction of the outlet. But she had to show up on the main street, and there were only 5 streets in the parade. How did it become noticeably lively in the yards along the main thoroughfare of the village? The first florist noticed grandmother Helen, who swarmed on her plot near the fence. The elderly woman immediately childishly broke her back and ran up to the gate. "Oh, Lucy, I didn't recognize you at first. I wondered what kind of a hottie in a hat was here. And it turns out to be you." Lucy politely said hello to the old woman and continued on her way. But it wasn't so easy to get rid of Grandma Lena. This woman smelled the scent of sensation from a mile away. And now she also galloped after Lucy. "Lucy, where are you running to?" The woman stopped. "Helen, to the store in a hurry." Granny perked up. "Wait, I'll walk you to the corner. I've got something I need to find out. I've been wanting to consult with you for a long time. I haven't had the chance. I'm listening. Don't worry about it. I won't keep you long. I wanted to ask you something. You're the only scientist in the village. You graduated from the academy, so you know about herbs." In the parade, it was customary to start an important conversation with an approach. Bavalina's introductory part turned out to be too long, and Lucy did not hide her impatience. "Helen, healing herbs and flowers. They're a little different concepts, but I will gladly help you if it is in my power. What you wanted to ask me?" Yes. I'm interested in those ethics that you breed. Tell me, is it true that they help with coughs to get rid of annoying Granny? Farmer said lavender is useful for many diseases, but about this you'd better ask our doctors. I only know that to treat bronchitis take the roots, and they prepare them in a special way. How? Don't you know? Although Lucy knew several recipes for lavender-based remedies, she didn't want to talk to Helen's grandmother anymore. "Helen, I'm not a doctor." The old woman's eyes shot several key lightning bolts in her direction, but Lucy ignored the old woman's displeasure and hurried toward the store, which already showed itself at the end of the street. "Sorry, Helen, I really don't have time." She was being followed. "Look, what a proud farmer she is. How long has it been since Elia was transferred? I remember when you were barefoot in the village with the boys. You must have forgotten how you destroyed the roof of my barn." The village troublemaker didn't stop listing Lucy's past sins, and when she got to the store, at the same time she recalled all the offenses she had suffered from the family bunny, with whom in the old days Helen had been friends or enemies. The elderly, scandalized woman was so engrossed in her denunciation that she did not immediately notice her waddling towards the store. Stephen was formerly a farm manager, and after his retirement, he decided to take up community work. He took to his duties immediately. "Helen, what are you doing out here?" Screaming in a bad voice, scaring people. Granny put her foot forward. "And who are you that I have to answer to you?" Stephen proudly puffed out his chest, like a village chief. "I have the right to know." Granny stomped her feet in huge galoshes. "Who elected you?" "He appointed himself headman. And you're making demands. You'd better tell people how you go to the farm at night. How many bags of mixed fodder have you stolen?" To put up with such insolence, even from a former lover. In his mature years, Stephen, often dropped by the lonely milkmaid village headman, could not, Despite the literacy, which was the result of an old injury, the man also took the appropriate look and even tried to step on the opponent. Helen, I won't look that you're a woman on crutches. You've got that way with your spoons on blood everything. The offended grandmother agreed to the whole street. Good people, what's going on? The headman is threatening me. At the exhausted screams of the old woman, Wendy, the sales clerk, jumped out of the store. The mere sight of this dimensional lady sent shivers down the spine of the exuberant shoppers. The saleswoman looked angrily first at Helen. Then she said, "Hey, you old robbers, settle down nicely. Otherwise, I will be forced to take harsh measures against you." The arguers instantly quieted down because they knew that Wendy did not throw words into the wind. Helen whispered something under her breath and headed towards her house, while Stephen sat down on a bench outside the store. Wendy returned to her workplace and to the questioning looks of several customers. She said, "Yes, they're at it again, Helen. They're all in a tizzy. They're fighting like little children. I can't even believe that people of such an age can have battles." "You never know," Lucy said thoughtfully to Wendy, "but it's true. Not without reason they say that old people fall into childhood. It is a natural phenomenon. A person is born, grows up, reaches the peak of his development. And then the reverse process begins." The saleswoman pressed her lips together. "You know best. You're a scientist. There's one thing I don't understand. What are you studying in this dump? What the hell do you need a flower plantation for? If I were you, would I have moved closer to the capital or left the USA long ago? You have a lot of money. What's keeping you in our village?" Lucy shrugged her shoulders and smiled stupidly at Wendy. "Surprisingly, that's the second time this morning I've been asked that question. I myself can't figure out what keeps me here. The land, I guess." The woman paid for her purchase and headed for the exit. But on the street, she suddenly remembered that she had forgotten the salt. Wendy looked at the returning customer with understanding and how she had forgotten to buy salt. Lucy looked at the retailer with surprise. "Wendy, can you read minds? With you that not only start guessing thoughts from behind the cuckoo. Soon, we'll have to do telepathy and magic. He'll wake up by tonight and come back here. They're gonna ask for a promissory note, and I'll have to listen to their hangover ravings." The women in line began to express sympathy for Wendy, and Lucy stuffed the packet of salt into her bag and headed home with a sense of accomplishment. To avoid running into Helen's grandmother again, Lucy took a roundabout way back. All the way she thought about Wendy's words, and after a short consideration came to the conclusion that there was a special charm in country life. Perhaps it was this very fact that was the invisible magnet that attracted and would not let go of the heart. "Merlot," Cindy said something to herself as she fiddled with the stove. Lucy asked in surprise, "You're on the run?" Without turning around, she replied cheerfully, "I changed my mind. You could say that your words had an effect on me. I was so ashamed that I immediately decided to correct myself. One more minute, and our book will be ready." Cindy Shorter had a big spoonful of brew in the pot. Lucy walked into the kitchen. "You decided to diet porridge to boil without salt. Why without poison was necessary in product?" Betty did. "Why did she show up at the end of summer?" The woman's voice trembled. And Cindy was finally distracted from cooking. But the girl forgot about the friend who'd lent her the salt because she was startled by the sight of her mother. She clapped her hands. "Mom, did you dress like that and paraded around the village?" "Yeah. What's wrong with it?" "Well, it's a killer outfit. The dress is in style. Not alone. I used to do it in the field. And a fancy hat. Betty's dad's here too, by the way. I can imagine his eyes would roll if he saw you in that outfit." Lucy shouted with annoyance at her daughter Cindy, "Stop criticizing your mother. Did you also walk around the village dressed in such a way that I am sometimes ashamed of you? How many times have I told you not to wear those shitty pants? You have a closet full of clothes. You could pick something decent, and you shouldn't believe it. Lavender is not a demanding crop, and it feels very comfortable on our soils. With the right technique, you can achieve a profitability of 200%. Andrew was not impressed by these statistics, and he stubbornly said, "I don't believe it." Herbert shouted at his son, "What have you got?" "I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Let the girl try. Maybe she'll do something good. Besides, there's a lot of land here that we don't own. The authorities will be glad to have someone to take care of their culture." But Andrew didn't give up. "But you need seed money to start a business. And as far as I'm concerned, Franklin's got you penniless." Miranda mumbles it's a good thing he let us out alive. "Yeah, he gave me my stuff. And we'll help with the money with Grandpa. We have some savings for a rainy day." Lucy decided to start her own business with a small plot of land. Only the question of marketing the aromatic products remained unsolved. But her childhood friend Alex helped her. Fate brought them together in childhood, when their parents took them to the village on vacation. Although Alex was older than Lucy by 4 years, the age difference did not interfere with their friendship. In the years of youth, the guy helped the girl out many times, and she always tried to look up to him. It was Alex who infected her with the idea of entering the agricultural academy. He himself also graduated from this educational institution with a red diploma and almost immediately settled firmly in the capital. Lucy kept in touch with her friend and knew that he held a high position in the ministry. After a short hesitation, she decided to remind her old friend about herself. Alex was glad to receive Lucy's call. "How great that you called. At the first opportunity I rushed over, so wait, don't move anywhere." Alex showed up in a parade literally on the 3rd day after the call. "Lucy, you have no idea how excited I am. Tell me about your life in the capital. I hear you're married to a serious woman." Bitterly smirked, turned around and curled up. "I have no husband, no company. All my efforts have failed. You know, Alex, it hurts so much to realize that the person you trusted infinitely just used you." Lucy spoke briefly about her failed family life and noticed that he was looking at her strangely. A hunch struck the woman. "Alex, do you have problems in your family too?" The man looked away. "Sort of, but I try not to dwell on it. Especially now, I don't want to spoil the mood. Better tell me, what are you going to do next?" After hearing about her friend's plans, the man began to actively support her. "Lucy, you are thinking right and have chosen what is now very necessary for enterprising people. We have the best time in our country nowadays, and it is possible to take a loan for business development. And with the marketing of products, we will definitely think of something. Can you trust me to solve this issue?" A week later, Alex called and said that there is an opportunity to conclude an agreement with a well-known cosmetics company. The firm is very dear to its reputation, so cooperation with it will open the green light for you. But you must understand that you will have to undergo a number of laboratory tests. Lucy was ready for any tests. She was happy that things were moving in a positive direction. But suddenly there was another beneficiary, retired Colonel Beekeeper. When the plantation's lavender bloomed. The next year, Benjamin set up his hives nearby, and he didn't even warn the owner of the plot about it. Benjamin became the culprit of the first troubles of the novice flower farmer. That summer morning, Lucy did not know what awaited her on the plot, which she cared for as a living being. Together with her daughter, she went to the plantation early in the morning to assess the blooming activity. She and Cindy had no sooner reached their destination than they were attacked by bees already stiffening their brains and bodies. It was only her daughter's screams that made the woman take the right action as calmly as possible. The girl jumped out into the hallway and started fidgeting in front of the mirror. Normal pants and holes are the most fashionable trend. Lucy glanced at the wall clock. "Cindy, you've been giving me head since this morning for almost 10, and I haven't done anything yet. Let's have breakfast. Let me do the handouts today, and you do the squats. Mommy, get some rest. Maybe we can go to Betty's tonight." The girl deftly distributed the porridge on party plates and herself sat down opposite her mother. Lucy could tell from her burning eyes that the girl was up to something, and this hint of Alex's arrival was not accidental. Cindy thought that she and her former childhood friend had a secret affair. but their relationship was strictly business. Lucy started the porridge, reminding Cindy of her daughter. "I don't have time to come by tonight to pick up the raw materials. And I haven't looked in the sushi tree yet today. If you have any more questions for me, tell me as soon as possible." Cindy took a long look at her mother, and Lucy saw something in her eyes that she had not noticed before. "Softer now," she said. "Why don't you say something?" "My cub." The girl began to rub the edge of the tablecloth. What was a sign of great excitement. "Mom, you just don't take offense at me, but I've been meaning to ask you about Dad for a long time. Betty has such a great dad. You're all I have. I was just a little girl, and I don't remember much of that other life." Cindy looked away, as if she were afraid her mother would read in her eyes what she was trying to hide from her. But Lucy said quite calmly, "I don't want to remember that man. He has ceased to exist for me. Mom, he's my father. Doesn't he want to see me? I can't tell you that. But judging by the fact that he's never called or written in 10 years, he's not interested in your fate." Cindy looked her mother in the eye again. "Mom, maybe he just doesn't know where you took me." The woman drew her daughter close to her. "He knows everything. I even sent him a picture of you, but he didn't reply. That's it. Let's not bring it up again. Aren't we living well together?" Lucy tried to sound cheerful, but her voice was sad. "Cindy, I'm going to be a teacher. And you wash the dishes and put the house in order." The daughter answered nothing, and the mother realized that she was under the impression of talking about her father. But the woman knew very well that one day the time would come, and she would have to tell her daughter everything. And that hour had come. The old heart wounds reminded themselves again, and the thought flashed through her mind that no matter how many times she chased away the past, it would still be knocking at the door. Lucy checked until late in the evening, ready to send to the customer raw materials, all the while reminiscing about her failed marriage. When Lucy informed her immediate family that she was marrying the son of a Moscow professor, her mother and father were shocked. But her grandparents rejoiced at the news like children. Miranda, despite her granddaughter's warning, spread the news all over the neighborhood. Herbert later reprimanded his wife. "What is it with you and getting ahead of yourself? And if the wedding is upset, what will you say then?" Miranda felt guilty, though. She decided to argue with her husband. "If you keep your mouth shut, then nothing will happen. Got into the habit of predicting things ahead. I'm just not in the habit of jumping to conclusions. You know what they say, don't say shit before you jump. And you, Miranda, you're getting ahead of yourself. Do you know what our tongues are like? And you can't share with anyone here. What's Helen's grandmother?" After a stern reprimand from her husband, Miranda shut her mouth. But it was too late. Her granddaughter's wedding was coming up. The whole neighborhood knew them. When Lucy dropped by the old folks' house for the day, she was harassed by the local women. "Tell me, how did you manage to land a fiancé from the capital? You don't seem to be anything special. How did you get the other neighbors? I was only interested in the material part." "Lucy, he's rich." That wife is in shock. The girl didn't answer such questions because she knew that every word she said would be turned upside down. There was another reason that kept her silent: fear of the evil eye. Such fears. She had been indoctrinated as a child by her grandmother, Miranda, who had worked for many years in the outpatient clinic as a nurse and was well versed in medicine. When the paramedic was absent from the medical station, she advised her fellow villagers on what to take for this or that ailment. Miranda was also well versed in herbal medicine, so her simple recipes usually had the expected effect. The rumor of the woman's clandestine practice reached the paramedic. The paramedic was very indignant and yelled at the woman in front of visitors. "Miranda, I will not have you practicing medicine in my institution. I am obligated to report this egregious incident." But the woman was not intimidated by the medic's threats. "Don't scare me. I could file a complaint against you too. You don't show up for work for days, and people come for help. You should be thanking me that I covered for you." After such disobedience on the part of the nurse, the paramedic decided to find a replacement, but no one would accept such a vacancy. Even the locals refused. For that kind of salary, let him crush his own floors. The confrontation ended with the fact that the paramedic came to house and began to beg her former subordinate, "Miranda, I'm sorry if I offended you unintentionally. Come back to the outpatient clinic, or I'm as handless without you." The woman didn't agree right away. She decided to torture the offender a little. Miranda had to intervene. He yelled at his wife, "Why are you putting a price on yourself? If you want to leave a man, go to work." "He can't. I don't like a lot of things about the office either. But I put up with it because I know there is no one to replace me." Herbert worked in the accounting department for over 40 years. There were only 2 entries in his employment history: hired and retired. Lucy was proud of her elderly relatives and insisted that they attend her wedding. The bride's parents also made their mark at the celebration, but left the day after the wedding. And the old people stayed at the House of Beauty for a whole week. They immediately found a common language with Herbert, who every day arranged for them excursions to Washington. Franklin's father praised his daughter-in-law Lucy, a real miracle. "With her, appearance in our apartment became brighter, and I will try to provide her with a job at our institute." Herbert was pleased with the praise of a noble relative, and he added that in our village all women are like that, and they don't burn in fire and don't drown in water. The professor promised, "As soon as I have free time, I will come to visit you." And so it was settled. Lucy was in the clouds, not noticing anything around her, but then her grandfather's voice revealed many flaws. Before leaving home, the old man called his granddaughter aside. "Lucy, here you are, Franklin's soul from the wormhole." The girl laughed. "Grandpa, it's just that you're used to measuring everything by country standards. It's different in the big city." The old man objected. "People are the same everywhere. I can spot a rotten one a mile away. Your Franklin ain't what he wants to be. You be on your guard with him." To appease your grandfather, Lucy promised to watch both of them. Of course, she soon forgot about that promise. She didn't think about her grandfather's fears either, because life in the capital had taken her on a whirlwind of its own. She and Franklin devoted themselves entirely to their common cause. Or rather, Lucy fed day and night over documents and new projects, and her husband pushed her. "Lucy, but try to finish this quickly. We don't have time. You realize there's so much money invested in this case. God forbid we fail. We'll be left with nothing." The young woman accepted the fact that she had to do all the rough work, and Franklin took on the search for partners and the legal part. Even during her pregnancy, Lucy worked at the same intense pace. She often complained to her husband, "Franklin, I can't take it much longer. Sometimes I feel like I'm going to fall down and never get up." The man would reassure his wife, "Lucy, you're strong." Your grandfather bragged to my father. I know Grandpa likes to show off himself and tell tales about his village too. Franklin, but even a strong woman needs rest, especially when she's in a position. After all, the constant tension can have a bad effect on our child. It was only after this powerful argument that Franklin made a small indulgence for his wife. But working to the point of exhaustion had done its evil work. The labor started early and was very difficult. After the birth of her daughter, Lucy turned her full attention to the child, which caused not only resentment, but also anger of her husband. Once Lucy did not hold back and also told Franklin everything she thought about him. "You treat me like a slave. You're just using me, without thinking about my health. I get the impression you don't even care about your daughter." The man was furious. "You should just keep your mouth shut and pray. Such fabulous luck doesn't come to everyone. Living the good life in downtown Washington, D.C., driving a fancy car. You dress in all the latest fashions, and you're not happy. So you're saying I should be jumping around and happy I'm in your service? It turns out that I have earned nothing and am worthless." Franklin laughed, "And in your face. Go to the mirror and look at yourself with your body weight. Maybe you can pull it off. $25. Lucy slapped her husband with a ringing slap. They didn't speak for a week, but Franklin gave in first. "Stop sulking. You pissed me off. I sass you about your fullness, too. I said it without exaggeration. It's time you started working on your figure. But nothing was working for him. And she did not have time to attend a fitness club because everything was taken away by work. The company Beauty by Franklin expanded every year and profits increased. They had to look for new employees. Frank personally handled the search for staff. Therefore, Lucy was not aware of the latest changes. But one day she urgently needed financial documents, and together with her daughter, she went to the main office. What was her surprise when she saw a strange girl at her workplace? At home, she interrogated her husband. "Franklin, why is that pretty girl sitting at my computer?" The husband refused at first, but then he said, "To begin with, all office equipment is company property. As for your second comment, I can say that as the head of the company, I have the right to select staff without consulting my wife, EU. And you correctly pointed out that Maria is the name of this girl. It's very pretty. Perhaps I don't need to explain to you that clients and our partners evaluate the company by the appearance of employees, and Maria fully meet the most stringent requirements. They deserve to be the face of our firm." The young woman even took a breath from indignation. "So I'm ruining the image." "Exactly. And I've been asking you to take care of your body for a long time." That sounded insulting to the young woman. She started dieting again. She even went to see a nutritionist, but he told her not to torture yourself in vain because you'll never be model standard. You've been born broad-boned, but your weight is almost normal. So it creates a fullness effect that doesn't really exist. She returned home in high spirits. But Franklin wouldn't even listen to her. "You're just stupidly looking for an excuse for your weakness. But I don't insist. You like walking the cart. You're welcome." Soon Lucy learned that Franklin was dating Maria. "No, Cindy. They're very kind. Will Grandma cure your cough? She knows a lot of herbs. She won't give me an injection, I'm afraid." "No, my dear. We'll try to do without radical means of treatment." The girl such an explanation satisfied, and soon she already sweetly advised on the lap of her mother. At night, the traveler boarded the train, which was going through the territory. Herbert went out to get firewood when an unexpected guest showed up at the wicket gate. The unexpected illnesses fell out of the old man's hands. "Lucy, Lord, what are you standing there for? We have tea guests." But grandmother was already standing on the porch and crying from the sudden joy. She kissed first her granddaughter, then little Cindy, and said incessantly how good it was that we had waited for this day. Now we can die now that the welcoming traditions have been honored. Miranda tearfully confessed to her granddaughter that her grandfather and I had bad dreams about you all week. "Tell us, what misfortune has befallen you?" But Lucy is so tired from the road and worries that belittling asked Grandma, "I'll tell you everything for sure. Only first Cindy and I must rest." In the evening, a family council met at the Herd's house. Lucy's parents also showed up in a couple by themselves. Upon learning of the arrival of her daughter and granddaughter, the young woman cried, and reliving again the recent events, she told her relatives in detail about how her husband had kicked her out. Herbert listened to her granddaughter with his eyes downcast, but his cheekbones were jaundiced, giving away his anger. Barely had Lucy fallen silent. The old man growled and spewed. "Tomorrow I'm going to go to fucking Washington, D.C., and I'm going to show that asshole where he belongs." Miranda started wailing again. "I don't want you to go to jail in your old age. Stay home, hero." The girl's father supported her mother. "Yes, father, it's better not to get involved with this scumbag. Believe me, he'll get a boomerang. That kind of thing doesn't go to waste, especially for a man. Although Franklin can only be called a man with a stretch, especially after doing something like that." Herbert said, "I told you he was rotten. I've never been wrong about people." The old man praised his abilities as a seer for a while. And then he said firmly, "You, Lucy, do not worry. T is not alone, and we will always help you. Have a rest. Gather your thoughts. Think of something to do." Andrew suggested a daughter. "I think that the best option is to look for a job in the district center. After all, you can get a job at school. You will be biology or botany to teach, and more useful fun will be among the kids because she will soon go to school. Lucy looked at her family. Thank you for your support, but can I decide my own fate? Herbert grinned. Our breed, bunnies. I don't like to be decided for me either. Of course, granddaughter, you know best. How is a little one better for you? Just 2 days later, Lucy surprised her family. I thought it over and came to the conclusion that I will stay here in the village. Andrew asked with surprise, and what will you do business here? The relatives looked at each other. Grandfather even chuckled from the excess of impressions. We already have one businessman, a retired colonel. He raises bees, so he got everyone. Have you also decided to organize honey production? No, Grandpa. I've chosen a different kind of business. I'm going to grow flowers, have leased a plot of land, and will plant lavender chamomile hut. Herbert said disappointedly. That's the number of vodka he drank and died the next morning. I thought you had something serious in mind. Did you get rich on such a thing? The young woman's face was transformed. She excitedly began to talk about the amazing plant, which she had a special fondness for. Even during my studies, I studied this business direction well. In Europe, it is highly popular. We also have positive examples. Andrew confusedly waved his hands, Lucy. But I don't believe in such fairy tales that you can make capital by growing flowers, and you shouldn't believe it. Lavender is not a demanding crop, and it feels very comfortable on our soils. With the right technique, you can achieve a profitability of 200%. Andrew was not impressed by these statistics, and he stubbornly said, I don't believe it. Herbert shouted at his son, What have you got? I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Let the girl try. Maybe she'll do something good. Besides, there's a lot of land here that we don't own. The authorities will be glad to have someone to take care of their culture. But Andrew didn't give up. But you need seed money to start a business. And as far as I'm concerned, Franklin's got you penniless. Miranda mumbles it's a good thing he let us out alive. Yeah, he gave me my stuff. And we'll help with the money with Grandpa. We have some savings for a rainy day. Lucy decided to start her own business with a small plot of land. Only the question of marketing the aromatic products remained unsolved. But her childhood friend Alex helped her. Fate brought them together in childhood, when their parents took them to the village on vacation. Although Alex was older than Lucy by 4 years, the age difference did not interfere with their friendship. In the years of youth, the guy helped the girl out many times, and she always tried to look up to him. It was Alex who infected her with the idea of entering the agricultural academy. He himself also graduated from this educational institution with a red diploma and almost immediately settled firmly in the capital. Lucy kept in touch with her friend and knew that he held a high position in the ministry. After a short hesitation, she decided to remind her old friend about herself. Alex was glad to receive Lucy's call. How great that you called. At the first opportunity, I rushed over. So wait, don't move anywhere. Alex showed up in a parade literally on the 3rd day after the call. Lucy, you have no idea how excited I am. Tell me about your life in the capital. I hear you're married to a serious woman. Bitterly smirked, turned around and curled up. I have no husband, no company. All my efforts have failed. You know, Alex, it hurts so much to realize that the person you trusted infinitely just used you. Lucy spoke briefly about her failed family life and noticed that he was looking at her strangely. A hunch struck the woman. Alex, do you have problems in your family too? The man looked away. Sort of, but I try not to dwell on it. Especially now, I don't want to spoil the mood. Better tell me, what are you going to do next? After hearing about her friend's plans, the man began to actively support her. Lucy, you are thinking right and have chosen what is now very necessary for enterprising people. We have the best time in our country nowadays, and it is possible to take a loan for business development. And with the marketing of products, we will definitely think of something. Can you trust me to solve this issue? A week later, Alex called. and said that there is an opportunity to conclude an agreement with a well-known cosmetics company. The firm is very dear to its reputation, so cooperation with it will open the green light for you. But you must understand that you will have to undergo a number of laboratory tests. Lucy was ready for any tests. She was happy that things were moving in a positive direction. But suddenly there was another beneficiary, retired Colonel Beekeeper. When the plantation's lavender bloomed, the next year Benjamin set up his hives nearby, and he didn't even warn the owner of the plot about it. Benjamin became the culprit of the first troubles of the novice flower farmer. That summer morning, Lucy did not know what awaited her on the plot, which she cared for as a living being. Together with her daughter, she went to the plantation early in the morning to assess the blooming activity. She and Cindy had no sooner reached their destination than they were attacked by bees already stiffening their brains and bodies. It was only her daughter's screams that made the woman take the right action as calmly as possible. She said to the girls, "Cindy, don't scream without waving your arms around. The bees don't like that. Mommy, but they buzz so scary. I got stung by one bee already. Look at the hole in my arm. I also managed to get stung, but it is better to endure." A few minutes mother and daughter stood, taking hands. Lucy half-whispered said, "Comrade Colonel, I would put your bees in one place, so that they would not be allowed to place their hives anywhere." As soon as the bees were gone, angry at the infiltration, the farmer went to see the colonel. Benjamin was delighted by the young woman's visit. "Lucy, you've made me very happy. You won't believe it, but I was just thinking of you," the woman remarked with undisguised sneer. "What a coincidence, huh? After all, I was thinking about you too, and even mentioned you in an unkind word." The colonel raised his thick eyebrows. "Why so? What have I done to you?" "Benjamin, I am not a girl to be spoken to like that. You're the one who can mess with my Cindy's head. Who gave you permission to put your beehives on my land? Couldn't you at least give me a little warning? You hid them in the bushes and your aggressive bees stung me and my daughter." The child could have had a reaction to the stings. The woman was telling the man off, and he was smiling cheekily. "Lucy, I'm so sorry you were hurt. You're overreacting about the land. You're just a temporary tenant, not the owner. Therefore, your claim is baseless. You are mistaken, Mr. Benjamin, and I demand that you remove the beehives immediately. Put them in your yard and don't forget to open the windows." The colonel has backed down. "Lucy, maybe we can make a deal. I'll compensate you for moral damage." "Wait a second." The man disappeared in the doorway, but immediately returned and handed the woman a chocolate bar. Lucy was stunned by this insolence. "Eat your own chocolate and put away your bee boxes today. Otherwise, I'm poisoning them." Benjamin snapped, because bees were the most important thing to him. "Lucy, don't forget. I could report you to the police. I'll report you. I'll see my lawyer tomorrow. But I won't let you do anything illegal." Lucy was only determined until the evening. The next morning, she was laughing about yesterday's incident, but Benjamin set the wheels in motion, and soon his son showed up in the village. The woman was on a plot of land when he drove his car onto the plot. She rushed at him, screaming, "What are you doing? You're going to ruin all my flowers." The man was of impressive size, and even Lucy, with her lush physique, looked like a pathetic chicken against him. He started right away with threats. "Listen, you're a florist, and once again, Bake complains to me about lawlessness. You will have a pale look and macaroni gait. My apiary will be here." He turned around and walked at a leisurely pace to his car. Lucy was in some kind of eclipse. She took a few steps ahead on the X-No. "You listen to me, you scumbag. If I see hives on my property, congratulate all the bees and warn your daddy that if he doesn't stop the mayhem, he'll have to deal with my grandfather." The reference to my grandfather had a much greater effect than the threat to kill the bees. But the hives did not appear on the plantation again that summer. But the rumor flew around the village that the farmer had promised to get rid of the colonel. Lucy found this out by accident when she went to the store to do some shopping. At her appearance in the village store, all at once quieted down. Even the word "Hunt Wendy" pulled her eyes out. Only Grandma Helen timidly asked, "Do you really have a gun?" Lucy stared at the elderly woman, then looked around with a surprised look at everyone present. "Dear countrymen, I rarely take it with me. More often, I use another object my grandfather has left from the war. He hides it in the attic." It was a shock for the wounded inhabitants of the small village. But the young farmer's dashing joke turned into another trouble. The next day, the neighborhood police came to their house in the early morning, when it turned out that the cause of the whole mess was Lucy's bad joke. The old people and the precinct officers laughed for a long time. But this story for several years walked around the neighborhood lady not from the soul of the locals. There was another side effect that hurt Lucy's business more than anything else. It did not show itself in its full force in the first year, but later when the farmer expanded her holdings, she found bald spots in her flower meadow on a daily basis. The local freeloaders usually raided at night. The woman tried to fight this lawlessness, but she could not catch the scoundrels in the act. Alex's daughter suggested a way out of her predicament. At that time, Irina was already 10 years old, and she studied in the elite Capital Gymnasium. The girl often came to them to play with Cindy. When she found out about the problem that Lucy couldn't solve, she advised her to put traps on the plot. The farmer didn't understand. "Betty, what traps are you talking about?" The girl squints her eyes slyly. "These are such devices to scare. They are different. There are those that fountains hit the face. There are sound. For example, a man came to a secret place, and he voiced from under the floor. She says, 'Put in place my candy.' You can put a horror movie in the trap." Repel means with a sound signal farmer. Purchased in the capital, when she went to the presentation of a new line of cosmetics based on Slavic oil. Returning home, the woman installed on the site repellent means of secret. Raiders managed to identify immediately on the first night, or rather, he himself showed up at the farmer's house to express his indignation to her. Lucy was very surprised to learn that for almost 3 years her possessions had been emptied by the village headman. Well, the elderly plunderer of other people's goods was not embarrassed by the fact that he was engaged in illegal activities. Stephen began to express his indignation to Lucy in raised tones. "I was almost killed by Kondratius. Lucy, how can you scare decent people like that?" Decent people Stephen does not climb in other people's gardens. To engage in such an unworthy business at your venerable age is very shameful. The headman said with resentment, "Do you feel sorry for the flowers? Why are they wasting away? I thought it wouldn't cost you anything if I picked some for myself." It turned out that the other villagers also had a craving for other people's goods. That's why Farmer She's plantation was constantly being raided. In order to somehow solve this problem, Lucy offered fellow villagers to buy their favorite flowers from her. She even offered a very reasonable price, but this option did not suit anyone. The headman regretfully said when for free is another matter, and to spend money on nonsense is not enough money. To get rid of Lucy's plunderers, they had to hire a watchman. After the next expansion of the plantation, she also hired 2 women who helped her to collect and dry raw materials. Each year the profits grew, and the U.S. farmer got her own car. She made major renovations to her grandfather's chorus, and even ran water and sewer to the house. The old people rejoiced. "Thank you, granddaughter, at least before she died. We will live in comfort." Lucy laughingly replied, "You're too early to die. It's time to enjoy life." Grandma was the first to die. Miranda wasn't sick or complaining about her health. She just went to sleep and never woke up. Herbert outlived his spouse by only 2 months. He had a stroke while chopping wood in the yard. The whole village buried the old man. Even the deputy of the village council showed up to say kind words about the man who had served his land faithfully. Alex, as usual, showed up without a warning call. Lucy was always happy to see her old friend and therefore immediately invited the guest to the kitchen. "Did you have dinner?" Orin interrupted. The man sighed. "From you women cannot hide anything. You see everything. It's a pity that not everyone is as attentive and caring as you are." "I'm not used to complaining. but lately I've been using the catering services more often. Lucy sat down at the table, leaning on her arms, and I thought life didn't roll on a roller for ministry employees. Pardon the tautology. No, you're right. And an ice skating rink is the most appropriate way to define my crisis. All right, you go. You can tell me all about it later. You'll be the first. Alex said, "What's your first course?" "Soup." "And for the second, potatoes with sausages." Two hungry fires lit up in the man's eyes. "Let's have both." "Lucy, you have no idea how much I missed simple home-cooked food." It was evident by the appetite with which Alex emptied the plates. "Lucy, did you just save me from starvation?" "No, of course not. I could have dined at my old folks' place, but it's unlikely I would have reached them alive. It's good to have a loyal friend who is willing to share a crust of bread." The woman was still looking at him carefully. "Alex, you've got a lot on your heart. I can see it in your eyes. You and observant. However, you've always been like that. If you want to tell me, it'll make me feel better. Basically, I came to see you on a completely different matter. But to make a long story short, I'm really in a lot of trouble in my family. You could even say it's a disaster. Although, on the other hand, it's a common thing. My wife left me, found someone else." Did the man lock his hands together to cope with the excitement? "No, I didn't say that right. We had a bad life from the start." Vanessa said I didn't live up to her expectations. Lucy was stunned. "Oh my God. I didn't think ministerial officials would have problems like that. Ministers are human beings too. They marry and divorce like ordinary citizens. My wife and I have been divorced for 5 years, after I caught her with a very cool dude. But we decided to keep it quiet. Slowly, we moved out to different apartments. My daughter stayed with me, and my wife didn't mind this division of responsibilities. But now she's suddenly awakened a maternal feeling, and she wants to take Betty away through the court. But if I'm not mistaken, your girls are 13. They'll be 14 soon. She doesn't want to move in with her mother because there's another uncle living there. And honestly, I mean, hand on heart, we are so used to living together. No one drops on your brain. No one demands anything. Alex, I think you're worried for nothing. If the girl wants to stay with her father, no one can force her to live with her mother. That's right. But trying to prove anything to my wife is useless. She's stubborn. In your face. Anyway, Betty and I are getting on her nerves, stalking us. Even tried to force my daughter away. So I brought her here." The man looked her in the eye with a pleading look. "Lucy, would you do me the old-fashioned favor of watching my kid? I won't be in debt." "Alex, don't be silly." "Sure, I'll help you and the girls will have more fun together. Only with school. What to do? I take my star to the neighborhood every day. We don't have any elite high schools here. I don't know. Believe me, we don't need to show off right now. We need to get through this crisis. Vanessa and her husband are going to Germany for permanent residence, and she's persuading her daughter. And I already imagine in advance what it will be like in a foreign country, Alex." I said I agree. "You don't have to persuade me." Alex left, and the next day Betty moved in with them. Lucy thought that the girl would live with her relatives, but the girlfriends decided to unite under one roof. Cindy took her mother aside with a conspiratorial look. "Mom, aren't you angry that we're being uninvited?" The woman sighed. Would it make a difference? The daughter started hanging around her mother. "Mom and Betty will help you, honestly. We've already decided we're going to take over the cleaning, and Betty can cook. If you let us, we can pick flowers and dry them." Lucy jokingly swung a towel at her daughter. "Get out of here, you little bitch." But to her surprise, Lucy soon came to the conclusion that Irina's presence has a positive effect on her daughter. In the relationship of the girls appeared even competitive moment. They grabbed with excitement for any work, and each tried to outdo the rival. More and more often the woman began to think that it would be nice to have 2 daughters, but she has long forbidden herself to dream of personal female happiness, and when Alex visited them, the woman behaved deliberately strict. Cindy once spoke out about it. "Mom, you're funny to look at. You're trying to be such a snow queen, but you're not very good at it. If I were you, I'd take care of Dad, and you'd be fine, and Betty, and I would move to the capital." Mother was indignant. "You've already planned everything without my consent, and I don't want to go anywhere. You can leave your mom's plantation to someone else. That's what real businessmen do. And why don't you want, for example, to become the owner of a cosmetic salon or something else worth picking up?" Lucy only shrugged her shoulders because she was not ready to answer her daughter's question. Spring came, and the farmer eagerly started her favorite job. She got the seeds of an elite variety of lavender through a former classmate and decided to plant a few more varieties of flowering plants to try out. In the midst of the work, Cindy came running into the plantation. "Mom, throw everything. Uncle Alex is here. He needs you right away." The woman always rode her bicycle to the field. She quickly jumped on the two-wheeler and headed for the village. Alex impatiently paced around the yard. Seeing Lucy, he was overjoyed. "You have no idea what news I brought you, Alex. Only bearing in mind that I can't take all the news adequately. So it's better to be careful and from afar." "All right. Have it your way. You told me you had experience working for a big company." "Yeah. My husband has a cosmetics company in Washington. Now you have a unique chance to become a sole proprietor of a similar enterprise. I'm told there's a bidding war in a couple days, and one of the bankrupt firms is going under the hammer. I think you should be interested. It's about time you went beyond your plantation, Lucy. Every endeavor needs to evolve. You're stuck on one rung." Lucy spent the whole night tossing and turning. She had long dreamed of owning something big and promising, but she was afraid. And now it was such a fortunate coincidence. Without waiting until morning, she dialed Alex's number. "Alex, I'm sorry to bother you in the middle of the night. I want to thank you and tell you that I'm ready to give it a try, but I'm kind of scared to go to DC alone. Maybe you're afraid you're gonna eat me." "Lucy, I can't make any promises off the top of my head. You realize I'm a government man, but I'll try to honor my request. Expect a final answer tomorrow." Lucy was somehow sure that Alex would throw away one free day, and she was not mistaken. The next day, the buddy himself called. "Get ready. Tomorrow at 6 p.m., I'll pick you up in my car. It's quicker and safer." All the way they chatted about meaningless trivia, and only by the end of the road, Lucy asked Alex, "Do you happen to know the name of the firm that is going under the hammer?" "You know, I haven't memorized it. There will be several bids at the auction, so I didn't really focus on the name. But something to do with beauty." "Well, that's understandable. After all, cosmetics are used by women to enchant us men with their beauty." This answer satisfied the woman, and she asked no more such questions. People with half-covered eyelids watched Alex. Now he did not resemble any employee of the ministry at all. He was dressed in jeans, a light-colored t-shirt. "Yeah, it's expensive, you can tell, but who would be surprised by expensive clothes nowadays?" Lucy grinned to herself. If the villagers found out how much money she had and how much she was going to pay for an unknown company, half of them would have had a heart attack, and the other half would have rushed to tear out the plantings in the vegetable garden to take up flowers. Lucy could not take her eyes off Alex's hands. He was turning the steering wheel. The cards and the muscles under his t-shirt were moving. She even got angry. She missed the male type. What more could she ask for? No more men in her life. They're nothing but trouble. Alex, of course, is not like that. So let him remain so good, caring, but just a friend. He suddenly turned to her. "Lucy, what are you mumbling about?" Lucy caught herself and was immediately confused. "Who am I?" Did he laugh? "No, unlike you know. When I was following you today, for some reason I remembered how you got your village all rattled, remember? And I had to lie that you were at home with me, and we were reading books." Lucy laughed. "Oh, come on. You haven't remembered for so many years that I'd almost forgotten. And here you are. It was so long ago, and it was such a long time ago, that Lucy had almost forgotten it. It was because of the same grandmother, Helen, with whom she still had clashes. Helen had always had a very nasty temper, and her then cat Jack had the same temper. This Jack held all the village cats in fear and attacked people as well as a chain dog. Once when Lucy's cat, or rather grandparents, came again in battle wounds, Lucy got angry. But Gad, I'll arrange for you to be the kindest, to love everyone. And most importantly, 24 hours to grandmother Helen songs to sing. Even then, Lucy was terribly fond of studying the properties of herbs. Of course, though Alex was older, but could not support her. They both didn't think it would have such an effect. For 2 days, Lucy prepared the potion. Alex only asked her if it would send the cat to the other side of the world. No, don't even worry. I didn't do him any harm. How can I explain it to you? It's like moonshine for our men always want always a little, and then fun. And then it's no more fun. As soon as it got dark, and it got dark close to midnight in the summer, the nights are short, Lucy and Alex quietly moved to the case. Alex guarded, and Lucy generously anointed outside the gate dough made by her liquid, and they immediately went home. In the morning, Lucy was awakened for the proper screams. She jumped out of bed and nestled against the window. The girl's eyes became huge at the gate. Helen, in one big circle, walked and shouted. That is, to put it in their language, cats and cats sang. The sight was strange, and from that very terrible. About 40 cats walking in one trajectory and singing. And the cats were singing, so it gave me goosebumps. There's a crowd of villagers standing nearby. People look at this picture with horror and quietly discuss when to wait for the end of the world. Every now and then one of the owners rushes out, grabbing her cat to carry it home. But the cat becomes real at that moment. Fury lashes out and rushes to the gate again. Helen's grandmother went sick because she was sure someone had put a curse on her. And Miranda probably did it, because she can. But Grandpa came up to people in the afternoon and Alex, Lucy, confess what you did. Lucy was ready to confess everything. But Alex said, no, Grandma Miranda, we sat up late at night at the books. And then Lucy went to bed. You saw that. It was the one and only time Lucy had ever fooled Grandma. The courtroom where the estate was being adjudicated was not crowded. Lucy and her companion wanted to take the empty seats, and at that moment someone called out to her, Lucy, what are you doing here? She turned around and turned pale. In front of her stood her ex-husband, but in this man there was nothing left of the self-righteous and arrogant egoist who almost broke her life. Alex watched the meeting of former spouses and did not know how to get out of his ticklish position. To relieve the tension, he reminded that it was time to take their seats, but Franklin couldn't budge. Lucy, you can rejoice, and I am a total bust. There will be a historic event in this room today. My firm, to which I have devoted half my life, will be sold for next to nothing. The man spoke with desperation and loudly, attracting the attention of those present. Lucy felt out of place. More than anything, she wanted to run away from this place. But Alex held her hand. You want me to show sympathy now? You know, I don't have any. You don't. Of course you do. You would have wanted a piece of it, too, and you didn't get it. Lucy suddenly realized how pathetic Franklin looked, like he wanted to get as much sleep as possible. Franklin, everything I need in life, I have. He looked at her with interest and only now noticed that his ex-wife looked pretty good. He could tell the difference between cheap clothes and good expensive ones, and the hair was styled to cut his wife's hair. Did they open a barbershop in that remote village? Franklin shifted his gaze to her companion. There was something familiar about him. I'd seen him somewhere before, but Franklin wasn't interested in him now. So you're saying you're having a great life, but Lucy picked up on it. But how is that possible when you threw me out on the street? Is that what you were going to ask? Franklin staggered back. He hadn't expected Lucy to say it so laudably and directly. But why would she? It was just the way things were. Franklin suddenly thought that, If he put his hand on his heart, Lucy's merit in their venture was, of course, enormous. The next thought made him remember. Lucy had loved him so much, and what if he were to make a quick castling change from Maria to Lucy? She'd pull like a real horse. She'd be able to think of something anyway. These thoughts so took possession of Franklin that he even missed the moment when he was demanded into the hall. He went to his seat and suddenly saw Maria in the hall and frowned. What had she come here for? And almost immediately heard that Maria had filed for divorce, and since she had worked for this company for many years, she was demanding financial compensation as a wife. So the wording was something like this: she worked for the good, and Franklin ruined everything by his unfortunate actions, and she and her son suffered. That seems like a lot of nonsense, except that for Franklin the nonsense was being discussed in all seriousness. He tried to spin his wife with a look, but she wouldn't even look at him. It turns out that if he got something out of the sale of the company, if he got anything out of the debts, it was from Maria. Franklin shifted his gaze to Lucy. That was it. Didn't have time to ask what she was doing here. Starting to complain about her failures, of course. And she's probably filing for some kind of compensation. After all, she did have a daughter with him. That's despicable, but he'll fight for every penny. The woman in the suit read out his debts at length. Franklin frowns angrily. He noticed that Lucy was taking notes and discussing something with a companion. He wonders why she's here, why she's rewriting his debts. There are two solutions to the problem. Firms completely disband all equipment, raw materials, and finished products are sold, and the proceeds go to pay off debts, or the firm is sold in its entirety, with the obligation to pay off all debts. Franklin was sure that the first option would be accepted. Then there would be enough not only for the debts, but also a little left for himself. By the way, it was Lucy who once insisted on buying high-quality, expensive equipment. She said that only such equipment could produce quality products. Even now, this equipment cost a lot of money. When Lucy raised her hand, Franklin looked at her with interest. Now everything would become clear. What he heard gave him a real shock. She is going to buy his firm, and with full repayment of debts at once. No, that can't be true. It's crazy. Where would she get that kind of money? He even stood up out of worry. He saw the way Maria was looking at him. Yeah, to hell with Marta. After the meeting, Franklin caught up with Lucy. I see you're settling in quite nicely. He cast a quick glance at Alex. Is there anyone who even keeps cows? Alex turned around in a second and smashed his fist into Franklin's nose. Then he took Lucy under his arm, and they went out to Franklin. Maria came up. You saw it. You saw it. Will you testify in court? Yes, of course I will. I saw you clinging to the chair. Maria left. Didn't even help him up. Franklin got up on his own and hurried away under the stares of those present. Cindy opened the gate and froze. Oh, when did you get back? And what is it that we smell so good? Alex's head appeared behind her. If I'm not mistaken, it's Dad's signature barbecue, and it is made on exceptional occasions. Alex laughed. You are like two purebred sheepdogs. You picked up the trail and followed the smell. The girls entered the courtyard. The table was almost set in the gazebo. They did not understand anything at all. From the house looked out Lucy at the broth and came. Come to my aid. The girls went into the house, not understanding anything. Ma, why don't you tell me what the big deal is? Betty slapped herself on the forehead. I think I know. Cindy looked at her suspiciously. Spit it out. Look, but it adds up. They went to town, then came back and set the table. They must have applied. Cindy shifted her suspicious gaze to her mother. Madam, we guessed right. Lucy blushed. Well, of course not. What kind of nonsense is going through your head? Take your plates and go outside. The girls ran off laughing, and Lucy took a breath. What had gotten her so worked up? Their assumption. That's ridiculous. She and Alex are good friends. And that's it. Guys, enough talking. Everybody get to the table. Meat can't wait to be eaten hot. Everybody laughingly sat down in the gazebo, and Lucy raised her glass. What can I say now? I mean, it's gonna be short. And then, if you, Cindy, want to hear the details, I'll answer all your questions. Today I bought the firm I once founded. But then Franklin, my ex-husband, decided he should own it. The firm is in terrible shape. It's broke, but it has a brand, which is now shaken. There's equipment, production. I want to raise a glass to the fact that it will prosper again soon. Cindy and Betty, who had been listening with their mouths open to what Lucy was saying, drank their juice machiniatically. And Cindy finally exhaled. The truth about what? The truth, daughter. But it's also true that we're going to have to travel back and forth. And I honestly don't know how to deal with it yet. Cindy looked up at her mother. What's the name of the firm? It's a pretty good sounding name. Franklin Beauty. But I think we should rename it. We don't want someone else's laurels, even though they're not there anymore. Cindy was under some stress. She hardly spoke at all. And when the guests had left and she and her mother had put away all the dishes, her daughter sat down in front of her. Mom, it seems to me that you are now quite old enough to know everything that happened with you and your father. Lucy sighed, sat down across from her and said, I guess you're right. I'm going to tell you everything now. Just don't think I want to deliberately smear my father. Whatever he was, he's your father. I always wanted you two to communicate. But alas and Franklin was up all night. He was thinking. His brain had always been an adventurous one, and now it was going to take a lot of twisting to get it right. In the evening, he made inquiries about his ex-wife and scolded himself for not having done it earlier. It turns out that while he thought that his wife was a milkmaid, so as not to starve to death, Lucy was doing very well. Not just not bad, you could say it was great. He didn't make a big deal about it, but he was told she had a lot of momentum. Now, of course, it's gonna be very hard to get out of it, because she'll think he's after her money. But there is one very good idea. It's Cindy's idea. He could melt a daughter's heart, that's for sure. And clearly the girl was missing him. And Lucy had never been the type to turn a child against him. So Cindy was the place to start. I wish I could remember how old she is. Better yet, find out what she's into. All right, then. Where the hell have we been? He'll think of something, won't he? As morning came, Franklin left the house. Cindy woke up and stretched sweetly. How good was that? They had such a talk with Mom yesterday. Cindy realized that Lucy really didn't mean to denigrate her father, but that's how her daddy turned out to be. Honestly, she wanted to look at him, to talk to him. I wondered if he felt anything for her as a daughter or not. Somehow Cindy felt like he didn't. But to be sure, to put a final end to this tale, she wanted to. Cindy, but are you asleep? Are you still awake? Betty's head came through the window. I'm asleep. What's wrong? No, come on. I'm going fishing with the bonefish today. You were dying to go. Cindy jumped out of bed, with Bones. How could she forget that? Yeah, Martin's the hottest guy in school. All the girls are chasing him. And he invited her to go fishing. All they had to do was figure out who he was more interested in, her or Betty. Cindy was determined if it was Betty, she'd step right into the shadows, out of the way of her friends. Betty decided the same. Although, to be honest, she didn't like Martin at all. He was too handsome, as if he wasn't real. And he invited her to go fishing as if he was doing a favor for a happy little girl. So Betty agreed. 10 minutes later, they were at the river. Dan, I forgot to leave my mom a note. Betty looked at Martin. We won't be long. He nodded in agreement. Surprisingly, Martin talked. He didn't sit there with a strange look, as he usually did at school. He turned out to be a very cheerful, simple guy. Betty and Cindy, they'd long since forgotten about fishing. They were laughing, holding their stomachs, and Martin was making up new stories. We were very interested. Martin looked at them with regret. Let's sit by the river in the evening. Polly smiled. Let's. Betty wanted to refuse, but Cindy gave her a look that said there was nothing left to do. How could I say yes? Cindy, the girls, and Martin turned around. There was a man standing not far from them, and looking at Cindy with a kind of pleading look. At me, she was a little confused. She'd never seen him before. And then her mind began to clear. You, Frank. No, wrong. I'm your daddy. Martin and Betty looked at Cindy in amazement, and she immediately calmed down. No, that's where you're wrong. Daddy's usually around children, and you're around me. I don't remember that. Franklin got a little off track and decided to get right to the main part. Cindy will definitely talk about everything. Your mom must have given you the wrong information. I just couldn't be around for reasons beyond my control. Look what I brought you. Franklin walked quickly to the car and pulled out a laptop computer. The money was a pity, of course, but he needed to impress Cindy. He realized perfectly well that a country girl, albeit a wealthy one, couldn't have such a thing. In fact, to be honest, he had expected to see a very rustic kitchen. But in front of him stood a quite fashionable, beautiful girl. Thank you very much. But I have a laptop much more powerful than this. Franklin shrieked with the teeth of a grave. You could have kept your mouth shut. Cindy was silent. Franklin was silent. Looks like this isn't going to be as easy as he thought. He finally got it out of his system. But how do you live, my daughter? Cindy sighed. I guess I'll have to go through this ordeal to the end. Okay, Martin and Betty nodded their heads in agreement for now. Of course, she would have to talk to her daddy, whom she hadn't seen in so many years. Franklin left the car by the river, and she and Cindy walked toward the houses. As luck would have it, they ran into Helen's grandmother. She stopped and gave them an attentive look. She thought for a long time what kind of a man she had already seen and finally remembered grandmother, and Helen picked up everything, rushed to the place where Lucy had Cindy, and she is there and knows nothing. Lucy pulled herself away from the papers. Now her head was busy with how to make everything enough for the customers and for her own firm. It would be very profitable. Seeing her grandmother, Helen wrinkled her nose and walked towards her. But what's wrong, Helen? You're here while you're in your herbs. Elkin's daddy's here. He's already taken her somewhere. Oh, lucky girl. And you wouldn't know it. Lucy's heart almost stopped. She knew very well how beautifully Franklin could sing his speeches. They could confuse anyone. You're not confused, Helen, are you? No, my memory's still good. Lucy didn't say another word. She jumped on her bike and rode off into the village. I came home like a fury, ready to tear Franklin apart right now. Cindy was lying on the bed reading a book. Lucy took a breath. Where's Daddy? I sent him home. For some reason, he thought we were very happy to have him back. Mom, what's wrong with you? Why are you so pale? Lucy waved her hand and suddenly cried. Cindy immediately jumped up and hugged her. What did you think? Did you think I'd take it? No, Mommy, you're the best. And remember, it wasn't just you he chased away, it was me too. Lucy was standing in the middle of the hall. Next to her was Cindy. Here's my daughter. I used to design everything here. Cindy looked at it with delight. When I learn, I'll come and work for you. Will you take me? Lucy laughed. Well, of course, the firm was empty now. All employees were sent on vacation for an unknown amount of time. Do you want me to give you a job now? Of course I do. What kind of job? We'll find all the employees' cell phones, and you'll call them, invite them to a meeting. Like tomorrow, 3:00 p.m. Cindy even clapped his hands. Oh, that's great. Like your real assistant. Exactly, from behind, slapped like that. Lucy turned around sharply. Two people came through the door and stopped. It was Maria, her son Kevin. Hello. I was walking by. I see the door open. I realized you were here. Maria looked tired. Actually, she was. She'd been looking for work for 2 weeks without success. No one wanted to take in a wife, even an ex-wife. A man who'd screwed up his own big firm. Excuse me, Lucy, I know this is probably a silly thing to say, But would your firm have a job for me? You see, basically, it's just like you said it would be. Lucy, who a moment ago had been ready to throw the woman out, sighed. Oh, what fools we all are. Cindy walked over to him. Hi. He looked at her with clear eyes. Hi. So it turns out you're my brother. He nodded. It's working. Why are you standing there like you're not my own? Let's give each other a hug. At that moment, Lucy held back her tears with great difficulty. No matter how willful, she's real. And she has a heart too. 3 months have passed. Well, my dears, we have signed very large, lucrative contracts, or rather there are several, but the work will go in the same direction. We can be congratulated for the new year. In addition to the salary, I promise to give a good bonus. People in the hall murmured approvingly. Many people returned to work. All those who once knew Lucy without a second thought. Those who were younger after the interview with her were those who had already found another job. But those two were slowly pulling up. Maria sat next to her. They had once worked at the same place, and now Maria was helping her a lot. It had been so many years. The market has changed a lot. Today we can celebrate a real victory. The thaw, Lucy could safely say they'd gone up. Cindy was often at her work too, often staying up late with her, absorbing and studying everything her mother did. So today at the meeting, she sat in the front row. They went outside and got in the car. Shall we go home? Cindy nodded in agreement. A little over a month ago, she and her mother had bought a very successful apartment. Mom, have you talked to Uncle Alex for a long time? Yes, a long time. Why doesn't he call? But Lucy will not tell her that almost every night grabbed the phone to dial him, and then put it off, afraid that she would violate his privacy. If he doesn't call himself, there's no reason to. Mom, that's not right. You know how Uncle Alex feels about you, don't you? Lucy looked at her daughter with a smile. How did she grow up? How? Well, Mom, you understand. Yeah. Lucy smiled sadly. You see, Cindy, if he had been interested in me, he would have at least called. Now, Mom, you're not acting right. Why? It's very simple. You don't need his help right now. You're doing fine. So he pulled away to get out of the way. Lucy suddenly hit the brakes. You think so? I'm sure. You think about it. Think about something. Lucy now realized that Alex was always there for her. When she needed his help, he'd drop everything and rush to her. And now that she's doing great, she hasn't even called him. She should call him. Cindy held up her mom's hand, which reached for the phone. No, I have a better idea. It's Uncle Alex's birthday today. She told me. But he'll be back from work in 2 hours. Of course, he's not going to celebrate his birthday. Lucy smiled at Cindy, and in someone so smart, call Betty. You and I are going to the mall. Cindy laughed. Now I recognize you. Otherwise nothing makes you happy. Lucy smiled lately. It was true. Even the successes of the firm did not make her as happy as the upcoming meetings with Alex. Alex had parked the car. She should have at least bought a cake. Betty had obviously prepared some kind of gift. He looked at his watch, and it was a few blocks to the nearest supermarket, which was still working. Okay, his daughter was grown up and wouldn't take offense. He closed the car and moved toward the house, opened the house. Strange, so quiet and no daughter to greet him. He walked into the big room and turned on the light. The air flew streamers from the clapper. Alex even sat down from fright. And then he saw Lucy. You, and she came over. Why did you keep it a secret? That it's your birthday. He smiled confusedly. I didn't think you'd be interested. Well, I was wrong. I'm interested in everything to do with you. He looked at her incredulously. You are? Of course I am. How are you? They stood in the middle of the gamut the girls had set up, and it was as if they hadn't heard or seen anything, neither the noise nor the foil glitter falling on them. Lucy thought she missed her terribly, and Alex wondered why he hadn't confessed his feelings to her sooner. Why had he waited until she was the owner of a successful business? The evening went well. Cindy stayed the night at Ira's, and Alex volunteered to escort Lucy. Yeah, I'll take a cab to get there just fine. I'm not arguing with you. I'll walk you all the way to the door. They rode in the cab holding hands like schoolchildren. We didn't say a word the whole way. When they got to her door and Lucy opened it, they didn't agree on anything. Together, they went inside. Franklin only got the back of the car into the gate the third time. How angry was he? How did he hate the whole world? He's Franklin, supposed to be delivering equipment and accessories for the holidays. But that's all right. He'll be patient for a while. And then he's bound to come up with something profitable. Yes, he had money left. Not much, but enough to live on for now to avoid such a humiliating job. But he relied on his intuition and decided to play the stock market. Now he had no money for anything at all. And if he didn't go to work, there would be trouble waiting for him. These two souls he could not find in any way on offensive words for ex-wives. They filed for alimony all at once. He got an astronomical amount of money, and it was very unpleasant. Neither one would talk to him. And then he found out that Maria worked for Lucy, and he just had to accept it. He stopped the car and opened the door. Who's unloading? Franklin. He turned around in surprise. Lucy was unrecognizable. She had lost a little weight. Plus, she was wearing a very well-tailored suit. All in all, she looked amazing. Have you decided to open a holiday introduction business too? She smiled confusedly. No, it's my holiday. And it's here to prepare properly for the wedding, for my wedding. No movers, by the way. It should be in your contract. She went to the man who was hurrying towards her along the path. Franklin immediately recognized the man who had accompanied her to the courthouse. Then came the realization of how he knew him. Sure enough, it was the man from the ministry. He had crossed paths with him a couple of times when he was still on the horse. Franklin kicked the door with all his might. What on earth was this? Why? Why? A single word boomeranged in his head. Pain shot through his leg, and he almost screamed, but there was nothing to do. He got the hell out of there and started unloading the car. Mom, can I invite Martin to your wedding? Lucy pretended to try to figure out who Martin was. Mom, you know him very well. You're serious with him. Cindy blushed. Mom, he's just my friend. Lucy smiled. It's nice to have a friend in your life, especially if he is a little bit like Uncle Alex.
Subscribe and click the bell.
The old boat stood dead weight in the garage, and Lisa sat pensively in the front, in the small wooden triangle at the bow. This boat had been made by Dad himself when he was still young, a long, long time ago. He used to take meticulous care of it, painting it every spring with new varnish, touching up and fixing things. Lisa used to come here to visit the boat when she was homesick for her father. As a child, she loved to sit like this on the very edge of the boat, and it seemed to her that she was not riding on the boat, but flying low over the water, like an Indian goddess, sitting on an invisible flying mat. It had been 5 years since Daddy had been gone, and now there was no one to look after the old boat. Lisa's husband, the jovial joker John, has no interest in the boat. He has little interest in anything but beer and soccer. Is she so wrong about him? A few years ago, trying to please her, the daughter of an academic, he took her to theaters, classical concerts, dressed in costumes, and listened to Wagner with her and her father. And then when they got married, he listened to Wagner for a while too, though Lisa was already well aware that he didn't need it at all. And now he watched soccer downstairs and drank beer every night. No, Lisa didn't mind at all, to each his own, but why did he have to pretend like that? Now she was disgusted by his pretense and wanted to leave so that she wouldn't see him sitting in her father's favorite chair, with his feet up on the low antique table, eating fish on the newspaper, throwing the scales right on the floor, and drinking beer with his friend Kevin, who came to their cottage from the city almost every weekend. Lisa Ann went away, upstairs in the attic, and painted her still lifes there. Peonies, poppies, field cornflowers in big empty jugs or in light transparent bottles. Her friend Molly, a classmate, came to visit her from the city too. She and Molly had been friends since childhood, since first grade, and they knew everything about each other and shared their deepest secrets. Molly was her complete opposite. Lisa is fragile, shy, was very sickly as a child, missed school every now and then, came down with another sore throat. Molly is athletic, tall, sturdy, bullied, always able to stand up for herself. They sat at the same desk, and Molly, seeing how draws in Notebook's dreamy neighbor, admired from the bottom of her heart. "Wow, how do you do it?" "I don't know." Lisa shrugged her shoulders. "I just see it in my head and repeat it." "You're an artist." Molly said affirmatively, and this statement defined Lisa's future profession. She did go to art school after 9th grade and then to the famous Watercolor Academy. Now she herself was already a teacher at this academy, and Molly was a successful coach master of sports and athletics. So different, they nevertheless always found something to talk about and continued to be friends, although, it would seem, what they could have in common. Molly, the daughter of intelligent parents in a city apartment, my mother even had a servant, my father was an academician of the Russian Academy of Sciences, a respected man, and my mother was also a famous musician, played the piano, taught at the conservatory, and at home gave open lessons. Now there is no mom, no dad, there is only one Lisa and Molly, a loyal, reliable friend on whom you can always rely. Not adapted in the domestic plan, Lisa, she always helped out, at least to get tickets, at least a big cleaning at the cottage, everything. All this was organized by Molly, and many other things too. Lisa just couldn't do without Molly, and John was terribly angry at first when they first started living together. "What's she doing here all the time? Doesn't she have her own things to do?" "Why do you do that, John?" Lisa answered with a slight reproachful tone. "She's my friend. We're practically like sisters, you know?" "But I married you." John continued to resent her. "Not that sister of yours. Whenever I come home, she's right there, unashamedly lying on our bed. How is that even possible? And she comes out of the bathroom in your robe. I thought she was you from the back the other day. She's sitting at the table by the mirror, with your bath turban on her head, a robe and a mask on her face. I couldn't make it out in the bright light. I came closer, I wanted to hug her, and she started laughing." "What, honey? Did you get it wrong?" "Anyway, you do what you want, but it's got to stop." John went on, "I don't want to live in a threesome, and I hope you don't either." "That's disgusting." Lisa corrected herself squeamishly. "I'm sure, but that was a long time ago, the first year or two of their life together. Then John got used to this state of affairs and didn't mind when Molly fried pancakes in their kitchen or washed windows to help Lisa, who suffered from vertigo. Molly's own home wasn't exactly sweet. She lived in a tiny 2-room apartment with her mother, a half-paralyzed grandmother, and an alcoholic father in the farthest and dustiest factory industrial district. Lisa and the whole family always felt very sorry for her and tried to help her, to buy her a dress, a blouse for holidays, or groceries, ashamed to embarrass her if she seemed inappropriate. Father, bringing tickets to various children's events, Christmas trees, theaters, concerts, and making out vouchers to pioneer camps, never forgot about his daughter's girlfriend, and Molly and Lisa were everywhere together. As they grew older and their interests and studies grew, they were separated a bit. Lisa traveled to Gliders with her school. Molly to training camps and competitions, but when they met after separation, they couldn't talk enough. Now that Lisa and John lived mostly in the country, Molly lived in their city apartment, and it was better for her to have a break from annoying relatives and to look after the living space. On weekends, she, if there was no competition or traveling, came to visit them. Molly was not married, nor did she aspire to be. She said with a laugh, "Good men have long ago all taken away. You, Lisa, lucky. You are always lucky. You are happy, and such as me, apparently not supposed to." She laughed gaily, trying to hide her sadness, and immediately rushed either to do the dishes or to cook something delicious in Lisa's big, beautiful kitchen. "I'll be there for you, like a pet." Molly laughed when Lisa convinced her that she would find her destiny. "Molly, you're so sweet." Lisa hugged her, barely reaching her tall friend. "You're like family to me. Do you want me to ask John to introduce you to someone at work?" "No." Molly shook her head. "That's kind of silly. If fate throws up a bow, so be it. And if not, well, I'll be with you my age to roost." She laughed again and kissed her friend on the cheek. "Cheer up, Lisa." As if Lisa were the one who had been deprived of her fate, and not she herself. Molly was not in today. 2 days ago, she had left for another training camp to train young athletes, and in a few days Lisa herself was leaving for practice, for nature, as the artist said, also to train children to paint landscapes. It was stuffy in the bright attic, and the dust flew, spiraling in the sunlight. Lisa suddenly felt so wistful. She got up from behind her easel, stretched, and opened the door. She could still hear the muffled muttering of the television from downstairs, but no one was yelling as loud as they could. Goal, goal. Apparently, the broadcast of the soccer match had already finished, and John and Kevin, just sitting around drinking beer, and the TV was muttering to itself. Lisa went downstairs to pour herself some tea and found that no one was in the spacious kitchen living room anymore. She turned off the TV, put the kettle on, and went outside, and by the garage she saw a startling sight: her own husband and Kevin, a friend of hers, pulling Dad's boat out into the light of day and busily working on it. Lisa smiled happily. "It's beautiful. I guess I was wrong to underestimate him. So what if it's beer? He can if he wants to." Happy, she ran down the steps and past the flower beds. Molly did her best. "Oh, let me in." Lisa laughed. "Your bones are cracking. You'll break them. You track and field athlete." Molly had already prepared an amazing dinner for her arrival. The men, John and Kevin, had roasted the meat. They opened a bottle of light white wine for her and Molly and drank beer as usual, but then also brandy, sweet for tea, said chuckling John, opening a bottle from his father's old stock. Lisa wanted to be indignant because they had agreed not to touch her father's bar unless it was absolutely necessary, but she restrained herself. And today was just such an occasion. They were waiting for her. They were trying, and she was going to make a showdown. Why did they open a collector's cognac? It's low. Dad would have said so. It's low and ugly. In the morning after breakfast, John, Molly, and Kevin, blindfolding her with a kerchief, solemnly led her to the pond, said surprise. Smiling, Lisa guessed, of course, what the surprise was, but she didn't let on. She was trying to play the game of surprise and curiosity, but when they took off her handkerchief for a laugh, 3 times around its axis, Lisa did not pretend to aghast. My God, what a miracle! On the quay stood, barely bobbing on the water, a boat shining with new turquoise paint, and the inscription on the side, Elizabeth, in dark brown ochre, stood out brightly, flashing against the glossy azure. "Thank you, thank you." She threw herself around John's neck, and then hugged her friend tightly, and even kissed the cheek of an embarrassed Kevin, who was blushing with embarrassment. "Thank you, guys." Wait, there's more." And Molly ceremoniously handed her a large cardboard box. "Is it just me, or is it someone's birthday today, huh?" "Happy birthday." The boys cheered and popped a bottle of champagne. Barely breathing, Lisa pulled a tiny kitten out of the box. "Oh my God, Molly," her eyes filled with tears. "Oh, it's so cute. Do you like it?" Molly perked up. "You ask." Lisa clutched the baby to her chest. "How wonderful you are, how fluffy." "He's tricolored, see." Molly proudly pointed her finger at the tiny body. "I'm told tricolored brings happiness. I'm already the happiest in the world." Lisa almost burst into tears of delight and emotion. "I have you so. All right." She was stopped by her friend. "We're the best, of course." And she laughed, throwing back her head, loudly, joyfully, reminding something of a prancing horse. And now sitting, as in her childhood, on the bow of the boat that had come back to life, Lisa felt a deep sense of peace. How good it felt! Her daddy's old favorite boat, which he had once given her when she was 5 years old for her birthday, pretentiously and lavishly named Elizabeth, was back in service. Here she is silently gliding on the water surface of the pond, cutting through the cassava, algae, breaking through the thickets of lilies. "Oh, look, a kingfisher." And another one, and another one. Lisa laughed happily, showing her friends a flock of bright azure birds that flew up in a scattering of jewels near the shore. There were always their nests here, I remember. How long had it been since she had ridden like this on this old pond? What a magical beauty it is here. Hey on the boat. Suddenly it sounded nearby. Watch out! Cutting through the calm, standing water, a motorboat was rushing towards them, roaring and blasting fountains of spray with its propeller, leaving behind a real whirlpool. Look out! The motorboat was getting closer and closer. Lisa stared at the flying jet ski in amazement, and at some point she realized that it was going to hit them. "Stop! Stop!" she screamed, and their own boat, already rocking on the waves, raised by the motorboat and shaking left and right. She was sitting in a Turkish way, as in her childhood, and frantically grabbed the side with her hand. John was yelling and cursing at the top of his voice, waving his oar, trying to push off and avoid a collision. The guy sitting in the motorboat, diving goggles halfway down his face, disheveled gray hair, some kind of tattered t-shirt, was desperately twisting the wheel and yelling back. "It's jammed! Turn, turn, turn." Boom, terrible jolt, noise, crack. Lisa, unable to keep her balance, falls into the water, very near the dreaded spinning propeller. Lisa screams terribly, hides in the depths, and the calm, bright lights, huge lamps, terrible cold. Why is it so cold? Scary creatures wearing the same huge glasses halfway down their faces, the other half not visible either, swathed in white cloth. Pain, eerie, still developing in two. Lisa wants to scream at the top of her voice again, but only a suppressed mooing comes out. She's awake, add anesthesia. Warmth envelops her. The bright light is veiled by a white cloth. The jackhammer is no longer pounding in her head. Good, she can sleep. Lisa didn't finally regain consciousness until a week after the accident at the pond. She had been kept in a medically induced coma the whole time. The painful shock of the terrible injuries was too great. A motorboat propeller had severely damaged her spine and almost ripped off one foot. At the clinic where she was brought, an old surgeon, a friend of Lisa's father, seeing in the patient's chart her rare middle name, worriedly poked his finger. This is not the daughter of Academician Vishnevsky. We do not know. The residents waved their hands. The surgeon ordered to make inquiries. At the post asked the relatives, and the information was confirmed. It was indeed Elizabeth, the daughter of the same academician. "Hang in there, Lisa," said the doctor. "You'll make it, no matter what it costs me." It cost both her and the doctor a week and a half without rest and almost no sleep. Lisa was under anesthesia and on tranquilizers the entire time. The surgeon on cigarettes and coffee. But in the end, he managed to get her out and reattach her foot and reassemble her spine. Now all we had to do was wait to see if it worked or not. Where are her relatives? With red, watery eyes, the surgeon came out of the operating room. Let them know it was a success. Tomorrow, if it's an uneventful night, we can move her to intensive care. Molly and John were sitting in the spacious country kitchen of the academician's house and drinking beer when the phone rang and John was informed that his wife had been successfully operated on for the third and final time, and now all they had to do was wait for her to wake up. "Will she walk?" Concerned John asked. He was told that it was too early to say anything about that. Shit. John threw the phone on the couch. Survivor. Molly was silent and concentrating on chewing crab chips. Finally, wiping her hands with a napkin and taking a sip from her bottle, she looked up with angry eyes. "I told you not to call an ambulance, motherfucker." She threw the empty bottle at the sideboard. The polished wood gave a resounding thump. The bottle shattered into splinters, and the antique glassware on top of it clinked pitifully. "Look out," rumbled John. "Don't beat up the antiques." "Fuck you. Spit on the floor, Molly, with your antiques. What? Did you bite it? She's alive. Your wife is alive. And still wakes up, calculates everything herself or with someone else's help, and will throw us out of here. And that's only in the best case, in the best case." Already Molly was yelling, out of fear and rage. "And if you coward had done as I said, we would be in the chocolate now, yes." "Calm down, Molly." John walked over to her and put his arm around her shoulders as she sat in the padded chair. "Molly, let's not do this, okay? We're so good together. We'll think of something. I already have a plan, Molly. I mean, think about it. What would we look like if we hadn't called an ambulance right away? I'd be in jail right now, and I'd be dead. We have to be careful, you know. Careful, step by step. Okay, Molly has softened up a bit. But what about this one? What if it cracks? No, John said firmly. He's already there." The girl tracked down the doctor and inquired, "Do you need any medication?" "You tell me, I'll get it. Medication can't help here." The doctor frowned. "We need to operate, and urgently. Surgery." "Then do it. What are you waiting for?" "It's a paid operation." "How paid?" The doctor didn't say anything. "Okay, but there are quotas, right?" "On the quota, the queue for the year ahead. And if we do not make your grandmother's surgery in the next 2-3 months, you will lose her." "How much is the surgery?" The doctor wrote down the amount on a piece of paper and silently handed it to Emily. "Where are we going to get such money?" exclaimed the girl in despair. "Is it impossible to do anything? There are some foundations that help to find money. There are funds, but they tend to help the young, and your grandmother, excuse me, age, what am I supposed to do?" Emily cried out of desperation. "Don't give up. Your grandmother doesn't need the extra worry right now, and look for money. I don't know. Borrow from someone, take out a loan. Without surgery, how long can she live? Until the first stress. She's in mortal danger from any kind of excitement right now. Can you keep her from worrying? No. Think about it. Surgery is the only thing that will help her. The girl returned home, completely powerless, lay down in bed without undressing. She opened herself up with a blanket and sobbed into her pillow. I'll never find that kind of money, she read. Even if I sold everything here, I wouldn't get that kind of money. What can I do? Where can I find the damn money? There must be some way out. Her sobs were interrupted by a phone call. An unfamiliar number popped up on the screen. Hello. Emily answered cautiously. Emily, it's Robert. Remember me? You scratched my car. The girl went cold. It had been 3 weeks since the accident, and she had forgotten about it, busy with domestic problems. Yes, I remember. Unsure, she answered. I'm calling to find out when you're going to pay me back for the repair. How much? In a hoarse voice of excitement, she asked. You'd better not know. Robert laughed. I doubt very much you have any. I'll try, I'll earn it. Emily spoke quickly. I'll give it to you as promised. I have another offer. What? The girl was surprised. This is not a telephone conversation. Can we meet tomorrow at the cafe after work? I don't understand. What do you want from me? I told you I'll give you the money. I'll tell you everything when we meet. If you come, otherwise I'll sue you for the repair money. Do you want that kind of trouble? Okay, I'll come over. Emily reluctantly agreed. She showed up a little before the appointed time. Will you order something? The waiter asked her politely. Yes, a cup of coffee, please. She stared hatefully out the window, waiting for Robert. There was a cup of coffee in front of her, but she didn't even touch it. Good evening. She heard and shuddered in surprise. Sorry, I'm late. Business. I suggest we go straight to you. Emily nodded in agreement, glanced at the car parked in front of the cafe, and blushed. The black, shiny side of the car still had a huge scratch on it, and it looked especially ugly in the burgundy rays of the setting sun. Tell me quickly what you want. Take your time. Robert grinned. You won't get rid of me that easily, and you'll have to pay for it anyway. I won't sleep with you. Don't even count on it. Emily cut Emily off angrily. What makes you think I want to sleep with you? The young man raised his eyebrows in surprise. I'm not going to throw myself at your bones, he remarked, hinting at her slim figure. I have a business proposition for you. If you do everything right, I will not only forgive the debt, but also give you money. Emily looked at him with interest. What do you want me to do? You see, I'm from a wealthy family, and my parents for some reason decided that I must marry the daughter of my father's childhood friend. Is she ugly? That's not the point. I don't love her. I already have a fiancé of my own choosing, but I know for a fact that my parents won't agree to our marriage. My father will think of disinheriting me, and I don't want that. I don't understand. What does this have to do with me? You're going to play my fiancé. What? She looked at Robert in surprise. Are you out of your mind? I've thought of everything. The young man hurried on. My father is a very stubborn man. There's no way he'd let me marry someone like you. What's wrong with me? The girl looked at him suspiciously. It's written on your forehead. A hillbilly. I still don't understand. What don't you understand? I'll introduce you as my fiancé. My father, of course, will fight to keep us from getting married. In his mind, you're no match for the rich heir to the family business, and we'll have to part ways. I resent the whole world and my father, who did me such an injustice. I will stop eating and sleeping. My torment of lost love will become unbearable for others. Robert accompanied his fiery speech with theatrical gestures. Emily, smiling, looked at him. But I won't suffer for long, to be honest. I won't last a day without food, but a couple of months or so. My parents, of course, my suffering will bring a lot of grief. My father, out of guilt towards his son, will eventually agree to all my terms. That's when I'll introduce Kelly to them as my true one and only lover. By then, no one will even remember my friend's hated daughter. I get to marry the girl I love, you get the reward, and we're even. $50. Emily said quickly. What? I don't understand, Robert. I want $50,000 and not a dime less for helping you. The girl repeated firmly. Robert looked at her dumbfounded and even coughed, choking with indignation. Aren't you confused now? Actually, you still owe me for the repair of the car. Isn't it too expensive for your services? I didn't expect that. You look like you're doing the right thing. Or you're paying that much, categorically declared the girl, desperately looking at him. Or I refuse to participate in your play. Find another fool who agrees to play the village simpleton. I'm sure she'll cost you more. It's none of my business, of course. But why do you need so much money? Where are you going to spend it in your village? As you rightly said, it's none of your business. Emily squeezed her eyes shut, not letting the tears escape. It's not for me. My grandmother urgently needs an operation. This money is for her. If I don't find this amount of money soon, she could die at any moment. I have no choice. Robert hummed, hesitated for a moment, then waved his hand. To hell with you. You'll get your $50. When are we going to meet the parents? The girl sighed with relief and answered, the day after tomorrow. Well, Robert said cheerfully and held out his hand to Emily. Shall we make a deal? Deal. She held out hers in return. I'll be there to pick you up, ready when you are. I'm on my way. Are you ready? Robert called at the agreed time. Ready. Looking back at the old woman, the girl replied in a whisper. The grandmother slept in her room. Emily went in from time to listen to her breathing. Just stop the car on the outskirts of the village. I don't want Grandma to see you. Why not? The young man was surprised. I don't want to worry her unnecessarily. I can't lie, and telling the truth would kill her. I got it. I'm already here. I'm waiting for you. I'm on my way. Emily hung up. Grandma? The girl peeked into the room. Jenna opened her eyes. I've been invited to visit here. Will you be alone? She looked at her guiltily. Oh, how nice, of course I will. The old woman was happy. Go, have some fun at least. Why should you stay at home with a sick old woman? Your business is young. Are you feeling all right? Don't worry, you'll rest at least. You're exhausted. I see. If you need anything, call me immediately. I'll be right over. Okay. Emily kissed her grandmother. Go with God, my dear. Robert looked with interest at the girl who was hurrying along the road. Yes, she was dressed, to put it bluntly, out of fashion. The young man thought to himself, the dress is simple. They don't wear such clothes nowadays, only for the village. It's good that it's not up to her heels, but her legs are nice and her hair is gorgeous. She should go to a good master. He could make a princess out of her. Emily, feeling his gaze on her, fixed her hair in embarrassment. Usually she put it in a tight braid so it wouldn't get in the way at work, but today she left it loose and slightly curled the ends. Don't you have another dress? Asked Robert when the girl got into the car. What's wrong with my dress? I'm sorry. Famous brands do not sell in our stores, and I don't have the money, as you know. I don't have. Besides, I'm supposed to play a hillbilly, and we have our own fashion. We can't keep up with you city folk, can we? Okay, no offense. peacefully said Robert, and started the car. It suits you. Let's go. And he started the car. Now listen to me. You have to create the image of a country girl who is dead set on the major. Sleeping and seeing how to marry me off so you can get a city license. Your parents can't guess that you've got a college degree under your belt. Let them see you as a poorly educated, uneducated girl. It's gonna be tough. It's okay. For $50,000 you'll work hard and you'll play it right. Remember, you have to scare them, push them away. Don't say or do anything to make them feel sorry for you or, God forbid, sympathize with you. We're here, Robert announced, stopping the car outside the 3-story mansion. Have you memorized everything? Yes, I'll try to play my part well. The young people walked into the house. Emily was worried. Robert, at last, we've been waiting for you. Mother was the first to rush out to greet them. Dear Mom and Dad, Robert bowed dutifully to his parents, giving them a solemn look. Meet Emily, my fiancée. Emily was shy, sunk her gaze and remained silent, a light blush playing on her cheeks. Son? The father's eyebrows rose in amazement. Surprised, so surprised. Are you sure that this is the girl you are ready to call your wife? What's wrong with that, Dad? Emily is a very nice, sweet girl. Yeah, she's not what you're used to seeing around me, but that's what I appreciate about her. What a big house you have. Gaining courage, Emily announced the living room with a glance. It must be worth a lot of money. Great. My grandmother and I have a small house. And the furniture. She was genuinely admiring the furnishings. I don't even want to hurt it. Playing her role, she began to look with interest at the paintings hanging on the walls. Paintings, she touched one. Never understood why to buy them. There is no use from them, only collect dust. Paintings are aesthetically useful, if you know what I mean, grumbled Father spitefully, looking at the girl. They should be admired, eh? Emily looked around again. Why is the vase on the floor? The girl touched it. Careful, my dear, Kathy exclaimed warningly. It's a 16th century vase. It can't be. And how well preserved is it? Wow, I've only seen these in history books. The parents were pathetic to look at. Robert chuckled to himself, but didn't interfere. I suggest we sit at the table. My father resolutely went to his seat. Oh, really? I'm so confused. Kathy had the servants bring the hot pot. Emily, what do you do? I work on the farm. And where did you and our son meet? In a nightclub, wasn't it? What do you think? That if I'm from the country, I'm so dark? No, I don't think so. My mother was embarrassed. Do you live with your grandmother? Where are your parents? They died in a car accident. I'm so sorry, we didn't know. Oh, it's okay. It was a long time ago. I don't really remember them. We're serving meat. Emily, pretending to be an uneducated hillbilly, grabbed a fork and hurriedly began to eat the meat. When she noticed Kathy's horrified look on her face, she was embarrassed. I'm sorry. With her mouth full, she said, Am I doing something wrong? Take your time, take the knife. That's not the way to behave at the table here. Robert said in a deliberately loud voice. Oh, I didn't know. The fork accidentally fell out of the girl's hands right on the floor. I'm sorry, I'll clean it up. She's blushing. I'm so clumsy. That's okay. No. Emily jumped up. I'll clean up my own mess. I'm used to doing everything myself. That's commendable, of course, but in our house we have special people to do it. Kathy remarked and pressed her lips together. Robert was having fun. Wow, I'd already believed she was so inept. Now her parents will definitely do everything they can to get rid of her. When the maid had cleaned up the floor and everyone had finally settled down, Sebastian spoke. It's nice in your village, the fresh air, the freedom. My childhood was spent in the countryside with my grandmother, too. That's true. Looking at him dreamily, Emily answered. But I want to move to the city as soon as possible. As soon as I get married to Robert, I will not stay a day in the village. Your house is big enough room for everyone. It's good that you don't have to rent an apartment. A lot of our girls work for an apartment. Do you know how expensive it is to rent an apartment nowadays? And I was lucky, yes, my favorite. She smiled sweetly at the young man. Well, maybe you will not be very comfortable to live with us. Cautiously asked the mother. Usually young people try to live away from their parents. Why not? You've got a big place to dance. We don't even have to see each other. We'll take a part of the second floor, for example. Surely there's an emergency exit in the house. She hummed in satisfaction when her father nodded his head, confirming her guess. But our villagers will have one when I tell them what a fancy house I'll be living in. Even having a baby won't be a problem. Robert will hire a nanny, and we've put them in a separate room next to you. Oh, I love it here. I'd move in right now. Too bad Grandma will be alone. Maybe you have a room for her too. We'll find a room for her. Oh, we'll all live here. Robert realized from the confused look on his parents' faces that it was time to end the show. He was afraid of overdoing it. I'm sorry, he said, rising from the table. But we should get going. I have to take Emily home, and then I have some errands to run. Everyone stood up. I apologize if I did something wrong, Emily said. She was terribly ashamed of her behavior. She was intelligent, well-mannered, and could hardly restrain herself not to immediately confess everything to her unhappy and frightened parents. I'm very glad Robert has such a good mom and dad. Goodbye, smiling politely. The parents walked the young people to the car and breathed a sigh of relief as they drove away from the house. What was that all about? The father inquired. Where did he get this country girl from? He always liked glamorous girls. I expected a bright blonde with plump lips and a tight dress that left no room for imagination. And this, Kathy said thoughtfully, there's something about her. Yes, she's different, but you've noticed, Father, she's not lost her shyness and blushing. It's so unusual. That's the first thing I noticed, by the way, but I kept quiet. So what do we do now? We'll see. While the parents were at a loss as to why their son had brought to their house a girl who was not suitable for him, young people sat in the car, looked at each other, and finally gave vent to their stifling laughter. You're so imaginative. Robert laughed. I almost didn't believe that you were really so ill-mannered and that you were using me to get out of town. You have no idea. Laughing to the point of tears, said Emily. How ashamed I was to behave like that. I'm not like that at all. And there are no such people in my neighborhood. I just remembered the heroine of some show and copied her behavior. Hey, have you ever thought about being an actress? You could play such an idiot on stage. I did it. The girl grew serious. Only for her grandmother's sake. I hope I don't have to meet your parents again. I don't want to deceive them again. I was immediately disgusted to take part in your play. Don't worry about it, the young man said lightly. I'm sure they will already today forbid me to communicate with you even close. You've done your job. When do I get the money? As soon as my parents demand that I break up with you immediately, I will immediately transfer the amount to your account. No offense, but I need to make sure we're on the same page. When Robert returned home, he expected his parents to attack him with righteous anger, but nothing happened. They locked themselves away. The young man grinned. probably cleaning up his feelings about Emily. Okay, I won't go to them. Let them calm down, think it over. Let's leave the conversation until morning. He went quietly to his room, and confident that his plan had worked, fell into a deep sleep. Son? 2 days later, Sebastian reminded him. My mother and I have decided to have a celebration on the occasion of our 30th anniversary together. We have already ordered dinner at our favorite restaurant. I congratulate you. Robert was worried. That's right, solemnly announced the father. Mother and I want to see you with Emily, of course. What about Emily? The young man was stunned. I thought you didn't want her in our house anymore. Sebastian knew his son very well, so he realized at once that he was up to something, but he couldn't figure out what. She's certainly peculiar, the man said, but she's very open and kind, no matter how strange it may seem. The mother interjected. We liked her. Of course, added the father. We'll have to work with her a little to teach her some basic table manners, say, but it's all such trifles. The main thing is that she's sincere. Robert, how many grades of education does she have? 11. Mechanically answered the young man. He suddenly realized that his plan had failed miserably. That's wonderful. Kathy exclaimed. We'll hire tutors and prepare her for college. She seemed a little silly to me at first, but I was shocked by her behavior at the table. But then my father and I discussed it all and realized her directness and ingenuousness were to blame, and it can be cured. The woman laughed. But it is impossible to teach kindness and openness. I agree with my mother. It is rare to meet such girls nowadays. She only needs a little dressing up and makeup. With your permission, I'll do it myself. It needs a woman's hand. I'll do everything. I'll pick out dresses for her in advance. I'll enroll her in a beauty parlor. We'll make a real gem of an evening out of her. I think, discreetly, Robert remarked, she won't agree to go to the beauty parlor with you, and she won't accept the dress. You don't know girls. They're ready to store all day long. And you don't know Emily, parried Robert. What a bastard! He thought angrily. His insides were boiling with indignation. It seems my plan has really failed. I've missed something. But I won't give up so easily. As he left the house, he immediately started calling Emily. They like you. He boiled. I didn't expect them to like you. They really believe that you are my fiancé. Who's here? Emily asked, nodding her head at the young man and girl who had entered the room. This is my friend David. Shit. Robert cursed. What bad timing. David? Kathy smiled. Why are you, dear, late? The woman picked up the young man with one hand and the girl with the other and led him over to Emily and Robert. You probably haven't met Emily yet, have you? This is our son's fiancée. He has kept her so carefully hidden from us, he's no good. The girl saw David's eyes open wide in surprise. He had already opened his mouth to say something when Robert interrupted his friend. David, I have something urgent to discuss with you. Shall we? Explain what's going on. David stared at him in bewilderment. Who is this girl? And why is your mother calling her your fiancée? I thought she was your fiancée, Kelly. What, did you trade her for this one? He nodded his head toward Emily and wrinkled his nose. I don't know how you could get involved with her and bring her here. Are you out of your mind? Shut up. Robert stopped his friend. It's not what you think. And he told me about the bride his parents had set him up with and the pact with Emily. So she's making this play in front of her parents just for the money? Yes, and I'm begging you not to tell anyone, especially Kelly. She can't know anything. Swear you won't say anything. I swear. Promised David. But I don't suppose your mother would mind a bride like that. Would she? That's the trouble. We agreed that Emily would get drunk, which would make her parents angry, but now I wouldn't be surprised if that didn't bother them. I can help you. How? I'll seduce her in front of everyone. I don't think Kathy and Sebastian can forgive her for cheating on them. Just don't go overboard. I don't want a scandal. Don't worry, you'll see a little flirting, and then in front of your parents, I'll steal her away. They're smart people. They'll know why we're going to be alone. How do you like that idea? It's not a bad idea. Robert said hesitantly, "Will my fiancée fall for it? Maybe I should warn her. Let her play along." Absolutely not. It has to look natural. Are you questioning my ability to seduce girls? With a conspiratorial wink at his friend, David headed over to Emily. Emily? He decided to take the bull by the horns. You're adorable. May I have this dance? Oh, she was embarrassed and looked anxiously back at Robert. I can't dance. Oh, that's all right. We'll fix that. In fact, I think Robert will mind. I'm sure he wouldn't mind if I entertained his fiancée a little. I can see you've been bored. He put his arm around her and led her to the dance floor. David put one hand on her back and the other below her waist. I don't like you hugging me too frivolously, Emily said sternly to her partner. She was already drunk, but she realized that her friend Robert was up to something indecent. Come on, roughly said David right in her ear. I know everything. You don't have to pretend with me. I can see right through people like you. Robert, I know you're easily seduced, doll, and your fiancé's parents must realize that, so you'll have to play along. I'm sure it won't be too hard for you, though. Robert's not your first hookup, is he? Come on, give me a big hug. If you start getting handsy. She gave him a threatening look, Emily. I'm not responsible for myself. I might punch you. I doubt anyone can stop me from doing that. We have to look natural for my friend's parents to believe that you're just a corrupt wench and can get carried away with anyone, especially when drunk. I've seen you with a glass of wine, and Robert's parents saw it too. Now I'm gonna have to kiss you, so let's not disappoint them. Just try it. With indignation, she gritted her teeth. You'll have to be patient, otherwise no one will believe that you are easy to seduce. With these words, he sank his lips into hers. And now the next act of the play awaits the audience. It's time for us to get some privacy. Emily swayed slightly, not firmly followed David, accompanied by the perplexed looks of Robert's parents. Emily didn't care what they thought of her. In the morning, she opened her eyes with difficulty. Her head ached and her mouth felt as dry as the Sahara. She struggled to get out of bed and went to the kitchen. She drank a glass of water and looked into her grandmother's room. Why are you lying down? She asked her. Are you sick? Maybe an ambulance? What's wrong with you, granddaughter? The grandmother asked anxiously. I've never seen you like this in my life. Why did you get drunk? I was so scared when they brought you in the car. You didn't look like yourself. Disheveled, I couldn't say a word. I had another heart attack, and today I can't get up. I'm sorry, Grandma, for upsetting you. I'm so ashamed, really. Why did you do that? Did I teach you to do that? And it's so embarrassing in front of the neighbors. But please forgive me. I'm really worried about you. How can you stay here alone? I don't have long to live. God forbid if you get addicted to drink. Who will support you? What's wrong, Grandma? Emily sat on the edge of the bed next to the old woman. That was the first and last time. And you're not going to die. We'll definitely think of something. No, you can't help me now. How are we going to get the money for the operation? I'll live as long as God gives me. I wish you'd get better. I don't want to leave with a heavy heart. I just want to know that you found your happiness, Otherwise, you'll be all alone. Jenna leaned back on the pillow. I'm tired. You go, I'll sleep a little. Emily went back to her room, lay down on the bed and thought. What to do? With Robert, the idea did not work out. Why did she even agree to participate in this adventure? For my grandmother's sake, of course, only for her. But now I can't take money from him. I don't need anything from him at all. The girl jumped out of bed and went to the window. I like him. Suddenly she confessed. Oh my God! Emily grabbed her head. What am I thinking? How can I, a country girl, dream of such a guy? He's got a fiancée. She's a match for me. Will he pay attention to me? He's probably forgotten my name by now. That's what I should do. Don't look at other people's fiancés. That's all. She shook her head. It is necessary to throw out bad thoughts and continue to live as before. All these acquaintances with the sons of rich parents has not brought happiness to anyone. I need to think about work and my grandmother. Yes, it's decided, she said firmly to herself. I will never agree to meet him again. I must stop all communication with him before I finally lost my head. Forget it like a bad dream. Emily? Jenna looked out the window one night and said, What's that car parked in front of our house? It's a stranger. Strange? Who could it be? You don't know? I know. The girl's a little gloomy. I'll find out. She went out into the street with a shawl over her shoulders. Why did you come here? She spoke sharply. I told you not to bother my grandmother. Why didn't you call? You can't say everything on the phone, and I have no one else to talk to. Robert confessed, approaching her. The whole plan is down the drain. David, my so-called friend, he grinned wryly. He'd dropped in on my parents by accident, and he'd said so much. I didn't expect it from him. He set me up. He said that you were only with me for money, and he told me that a couple months ago I had another girl. I don't know what to do now. How do I face my parents? The best part. Emily looked boldly at Robert. Explain yourself to your parents. Stop lying. They don't deserve to be treated like this. Confess everything. It'll be easier on yourself. I'm sure they'll understand you. They're not animals. They're just wishing you happiness, not realizing you have a sweetheart. No, no, no. I can't tell them everything right now. You said you'd help, so you have to follow through. Don't count on me. The girl replied firmly. I refuse to take part in this farce. I've done so much already. This is for your amusement, and I have no time to play with toys. I have to think about where to find money for my grandmother's operation. Leave me alone. Don't worry about it. I'm ready to pay for your grandma's treatment. Give me an account to transfer the money to. But I didn't keep my end of the bargain. I don't care. I don't care anymore. If I say I'll help you without conditions. Well, I don't know. Emily's confused. I don't feel comfortable taking money from you, so David's right. David is a traitor. I don't know why he even got involved in this case, but I'll figure it out. Tell me where to wire the money, and I will do it immediately. Jenna's operation was a success. It was done as soon as the money came in. Everything's going well. The attending physician remarked, Your grandmother will be back home as good as new. Thank you, doctor. Grandma was on the mend. The girl was flying on wings until one day the phone rang. Emily? One day she heard the phone ring. It's Kathy, Robert's mom. Remember me? You were at our house and then at the restaurant where you disappeared so suddenly with David? Yes, of course I remember. Hello. Orabev, the girl replied. I forbid you to mess with my son's head. I know that you decided to marry Robert for the money, and I know that you have already received a tidy sum on your account. Well, I don't want you anywhere near my son anymore. You got your money in your pocket. Leave Robert alone. Shame on you for covering up for Grandma's illness. But the girl tried to explain, I'm not going to listen to your lies. It is you with your beauty and supposed innocence turned my son's head, but I will not be fooled. I know you're kind. I forbid you to come within a cannon shot of my son. If you try anything else to trick him, I'll go to the police. You're a fraud. That's not true. You're wrong. I don't want to hear a word of it. You got the money, disappeared, broke Robert's heart. And how nice you seemed to Sebastian and me. But in fact, you turned out to be a calculating hypocrite. You've gained our trust, so that your foot in our house will not be in our house anymore. Emily, discouraged by the call, listened silently to the short beeps in the receiver. What did you want? She said, trying to hold back her tears. Everything had happened as planned. Now for the real bride, Robert. The road is clear. We have achieved our goal. And me. The girl threw the phone on the table and cried. Robert walked from corner to corner, measuring the room with his steps, glancing nervously at his watch. It's time to go to the airport, he remarked. I can't be late and not meet Kelly on time. He quickly got into the car. Kelly? He opened his arms to the girl. I didn't expect you to come now. You were going to be home in 2 months, weren't you? This is for you. He handed her a bouquet of red roses. What's wrong? You're the one I should be asking. What happened? Coldly, the girl answered him. I don't know what you mean. David called me and told me you had another fiancé. You think I was supposed to sit around and wait for you to marry her? I demand an explanation. Why are you listening to him? Robert laughed nervously. He's always been jealous of me. I think he told you that on purpose so that you would leave me. Don't you know he's jealous of you? He was just waiting for a chance to break us up. I don't really have any other fiancé but you. You mean? The girl looked at him suspiciously. He's making it all up? Not exactly. Robert hesitated. Why don't we sit down somewhere and I'll explain it all to you? All right. Kelly agreed reluctantly. But that doesn't mean I've forgiven you. The young people arrived at the restaurant. Robert ordered dinner. Look, I did it for us. My parents have the idea of marrying me off to the daughter of a friend of my father's. They wanted to boost business, but they forgot to ask me if I wanted to marry her. What was I supposed to do? I came up with a plan, and Emily came along. Oh, so the girl David was talking about was a girl? I'm not saying no. She must have turned my parents against me. They would have forbidden me to marry her. I would naturally be in inconsolable grief for some time, until my father relented and gave me permission to marry the one I had long considered my fiancé. You do not deceive me. Kelly looked at him jealously. Was it all like this? Of course it was. Why would I deceive you? Everything I do is just for you and me. And the money? Did you really pay her? I did. She kept her end of the bargain, but most importantly, the plan worked, and now I can introduce you to your parents. When were you going to tell me all this? I was expecting you in 2 months. I couldn't have said anything over the phone. You wouldn't have talked to me. Now do you believe that I didn't cheat on you? Tell me, am I forgiven? I haven't decided yet. The beauty said haughtily, when you introduce me to your parents, then we'll see. Robert's decision to talk to his parents was not easy. Mom, Dad, when the moment was right, he said, I have something to confess to you. What is it? I have to tell you that Emily is not my fiancée. I lied to you. What, not your fiancée? Kathy was shocked by the message. Then who is? I met her by accident. She scratched my car. Since she didn't have the money to fix it, I offered to help her out a little. What kind of game are you playing? Dad frowned. I don't want to marry the girl you insist on marrying. In fact, I have a fiancée, and I love her very much. Wait, so everything that's been going on here lately is a hoax, an act? The mother looked at Robert in confusion. And who is this girl really? Her name is really Emily. She really lives in the countryside, but she has a college degree. She is a veterinarian. But she pretended to be your fiancée for money. She did it to save her grandmother, not for profit. Her grandmother needed heart surgery, so we made a deal. She helps me, and I help her. Do you realize I said some pretty nasty things to her on the phone? Kathy, pale as chalk, was furious with her son. I accused the poor girl of God knows what, and I didn't even give her a chance to defend herself. What position have you put us in? For God's sake, tell me, how is she doing? I haven't seen her in a long time. But have you even tried calling her? Many times, but she doesn't answer and ignores my messages. Why are you doing this, Robert? Sebastian looked angrily at his son. Couldn't you have come and told her you didn't want to get married? I couldn't. Robert was desperate. You've been running around with that bride of yours like a piece of paper, praising her, telling everyone about your upcoming wedding. What would you say to me, Papa, if I came and said I didn't want to marry that girl? I wanted to marry this girl. Would you have listened to me? I had to cheat, and you involved an innocent girl in your schemes. Anyway, now you know everything. I'd like you to meet my real fiancée, Kelly. She just got back from overseas. No way. Father cut me off. Stop us from making new acquaintances. You better deal with your fiancés first. Mom. Robert turned to her, looking for support. Father's right. Kathy said thoughtfully, when you're sure you're ready to marry her, you can bring her to our house. We don't want to witness any more of your love dramas, and we're not ready to get to know Kelly. Parents, I didn't expect this from you. Robert was desperate. Now he was afraid that Kelly would take offense at his refusal to introduce her to her father and mother. Now this topic is no longer discussed in our house, Sebastian said firmly. Robert thought how to explain himself to Kelly and was afraid of this conversation. However, the girl did not even ask when the meeting with her parents would take place. She, having returned to her homeland, immediately plunged into social life and completely captured the attention of the young man. Robert, the parents were offended. We do not see you at all. I have almost no free time. Justified the son. Kelly doesn't like to stay at home. We then in the club at midnight, then at a restaurant for dinner, and in the afternoon I work. I don't have much time to sleep, and there's no time to go out. She'll drive you crazy. Mother was worried. I really missed her. Robert smiled. Even a minute without her seems irretrievably lost. The young man was being sly. He did not want to admit that the relationship with his beloved was not so cloudless. Kelly, I'm so glad you're here, he said, admiring his bride. I'm glad too. She pouted her lips. But do you know what it cost me to cancel my contract? I've lost so much money, you can't even imagine. Darling, I'm prepared to reimburse you for all your losses. Ask for anything you want. Well, I don't know. She raised her eyes to the sky, showing that she was very concerned about the choice of gift. I've been wanting a new car for a long time. Mine is too simple for your fiancé status. You should be ashamed of yourself. She wagged her finger playfully and winked slyly at the young man. For having such an old model of car. Okay, let's go to the car dealership tomorrow and buy the one you want. Honey, Kelly squealed. You're such a sweetheart. I adore you. This is gonna be the best present ever. I'd forgive you anything for it. The next day they went shopping. I want this one. Kelly pointed her finger at an expensive SUV. Why do you need such a huge car? Robert tried to talk her out of it. Why don't we find you something more feminine? Just say you didn't have the money. Kelly folded her arms across her chest and turned away from her fiancé. She'd always been cranky, but she'd never disliked that behavior before. Now, however, Robert found himself increasingly annoyed by her petulance. He glimpsed the manager, his face devoid of any emotion, but with a sneer in his eyes. You gave $50,000 to some girl, and you spared me your fiancé. Why do I have to beg you for gifts? Explain. A real man never refuses his woman anything. Or maybe you've had enough of me. You know I'm not. Calm down, please. You don't have to make a scene here. I'll buy this car. If you like it so much to please you, I'll take a star out of the sky. No offense. He kissed her on her cheek, which was blushing with annoyance, and nodded to the manager, who was watching the lovers with a nonchalant look. That evening they sat at a table in the restaurant and discussed the purchase. Honey, I'm so grateful to you for this regal gift. I've already posted a photo of the car on my social media page. I've never gotten so many likes before. The phone does not seize, they call, asking when it will be possible to ride on my Swallow. Listen, Kelly, I'm gonna need your help soon, interrupted Robert's enthusiastic exclamation. I have a dinner with a business partner in 3 days. He'll be with his wife, and I need your presence. Darling, can you hear me? He called out to the girl, who was deftly typing on her phone. What? She looked at the groom unhappily, reluctantly, breaking away from her occupation. No, sorry, I cannot. Aren't you at all interested in what I do? Honey, it's so boring. She wrinkled her nose and looked at the phone again. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to leave. Where? We haven't even had lunch yet. My agent texted me. Standing up from the table, Kelly said. There's a casting call coming up. I can't miss it. I need new contracts. Bye, sweetie. She sent him an air kiss and ran off. I think. The young man watched thoughtfully as his fiancée quickly got into the car, on the go, talking to someone on the phone. Kelly, all you need from me is money. She had changed a lot since returning home. She used to be interested in the firm's business. And her temper tantrums, no, we've had fights before, but somehow it doesn't irritate me the way it does now. It feels like she's playing a role, and it turns out it's not sincere. Can't she still forgive me for Emily? It's my fault, of course, but she should realize that this whole stupid situation with the fake bride is long over. That evening, Kelly called Robert and said, Honey, I'm ready to go out with your partner or whoever, but only on one condition. You give me a necklace. I bought a dress suitable for such a dinner, but my jewelry looks too plain with it. All right, the young man immediately agreed. We'll be sure to buy you a necklace. We'll meet at the jewelry salon tomorrow. My heart pricked unpleasantly. Emily would never put conditions on me. She would immediately agree to go with me. Stop. What am I thinking? The young man blushed involuntarily. How easy and simple everything was with Emily, how sincere and heartfelt she was. I had fun and freedom with her. I thought she even liked me. He involuntarily smiled, remembering the cute features of the girl's face, her long hair, simple dress, which sat well on her slender figure. The next day at the jewelry store, Kelly made another disgusted scene. This necklace will not go with your dress. The saleswoman patiently explained to the girl, You are thin, and on your chest jewelry will look bulky. Do you realize what you're saying? How dare you embarrass me in front of my fiancé? Who the hell do you think you are? You stupid, brainless chicken. Kelly was outraged. No, how insolent is that? Robert, she just insulted me. called me skinny and said that the necklace doesn't fit me. Kelly, Robert said gently, trying to calm the furious bride. Why don't you look at another one? Just to compare. I think the salesman's right. I get it. Kelly glared angrily. You felt sorry for my money because I picked the most expensive necklace? And I didn't really want to buy anything from you guys. I don't want anything. And I'm not going to the appointment. Okay, that stupid sales girl just made me look stupid. But you, Robert, how could you question my taste? Can't I decide what kind of jewelry to match my dress? I'm sorry, my love. If you want, we can buy this necklace. The incident was over, but relations between the young people were getting worse. And more often at such moments, Robert thought of Emily and caught himself thinking that he missed her. Son, Kathy asked me one day, when are you going to introduce us to your bride? It's been so long. You don't say a word. Your father doesn't want to talk about it. And what can I do? I want grandchildren. Stop resenting each other. Are you and Kelly coming over for dinner tomorrow night? Kathy made sure the table was properly set. The cook has prepared a gourmet meal. What are you doing here? It's like we're hosting royalty. A model, what a profession. Sebastian was angry with his wife. I don't want to make a fool of myself, she told her husband. The girl lived abroad, accustomed to good cuisine. I wish I had hired a chef from the restaurant. However, our chef also knows a thing or two about food. That's my Kelly. Robert introduced his fiancée to the parents. The girl looked arrogantly at the owners of the house and gritted her teeth. Hello, I thought you had a bigger house. Robert, he's been buzzing my ears about what a great house you have. I think so. Sebastian replied discreetly. There's plenty of room for everyone, but we're not going to live here anyway, are we, love? She smiled at Robert. I hope my future husband will buy a house for us. Can we go to the table now? I'm starving. Kathy replied confusedly. Yes, come in. Everything's ready. Kelly looked at the table and sat down at the table. I've lived abroad. They don't serve too many dishes. We didn't come here to eat. I can't eat too much. I have to keep in shape. I think it's very irrational to spend so much money on food. But I have men in my house, justified the hostess. They are used to eating well. And you, dear Kathy. The guest remarked, it would be good to look after your figure. After all age, it's time to think about your health. Kelly softly pulled her Robert. You're being defiant. What did I say? She shrugged. Every self-respecting woman should strive to keep young. That's abroad do not make a cult of food. They watch out for health and appearance. Kelly is right, of course. Barely holding back her tears, her mother said, I do love to eat, and being overweight is ruining me. I actually think, the girl spoke again, it's much better to have these dinners in a restaurant. No dishes, no hassle around the house. I'm not going to spend most of my life in the kitchen. Robert and I will eat at restaurants. Can't we talk about something else? Dad broke the silence. When are you getting married? We haven't talked to Kelly about it yet. Robert was embarrassed. The wedding can wait. Kelly looked sternly at the groom. I've signed a new contract, very favorable and promising for my career, and I'm not going to lose it. What about the grandchildren? Kathy asked shyly. I was so dreaming that you would soon have a little one. Oh, she waved her hands. I don't even think about that. A baby would put an end to my modeling career. No way. No kids while you're young. The age of the model is short. When I'm closer to 40, I can think about children. And in general, diapers, cradles, it's not for me. Kelly's cell phone screen suddenly lit up. She quickly read the message. I'm sorry, but we have to go." She stood up. "Honey, will you walk me out? I've missed a lot already, you know." Sure. What are you talking about?" Lisa nodded. "Go, of course. Let John take you to the train or whatever it is you're going to do." "That's the point," said Molly. "Exactly how do you get there?" All of ours had already left, and I decided at the last minute. "It was a shame to leave you alone in the city like that, you know. That's why I can't get the tickets I need. Airplane tickets are too expensive, and the train tickets are all sold out. Would you mind if John gave me a ride to New York in his car? And from there are good tickets. I checked." "Of course. What are you talking about?" Lisa exclaimed. "Who would I be if I objected? You both care about me so much, of course you'll go. Then we'll say goodbye." Molly smiled. "We'd have to leave early tomorrow to make it on time. We'll leave at 4 o'clock in the morning, right, John?" "Sort of," agreed John. "And you, honey, sleep, don't worry. And don't forget to take your pills. They're good for you." The day when Lisa was left all alone, apart from the nurse and the kitten, was unusually nice and sunny. It was like an unplanned holiday in the middle of November. Lisa asked the nurse to take her out into the garden, sat in the sunshine, and breathed the fresh air. Then had breakfast at 11 o'clock as usual and went to the veranda to work while there was good light. And about an hour later, heard the noise of the automatic gate pulling away, surprised and alarmed. Had John and Molly really returned? Maybe they had forgotten something important, say, a passport, and would now be late for the train. But a completely unfamiliar car drove into the yard. Out of it came strangers, a woman and a man, and with them a small child. As if they were at home, they went to the front door of the house and opened it with a key. "Emily, Emily!" shouted Lisa to the nurse. "Emily, come here, for God's sake. Some strangers have come to our yard. Go ask them what they want." Emily left, and Lisa sat alone on the veranda again, listening to some lively dialogue between her and the strangers. She could hardly make out the words from the veranda, and here came the disturbed Emily, and with her the man who had come in the big unfamiliar car. "Good afternoon. Weren't you supposed to leave before today, as agreed?" "What do you mean?" "I don't understand, Lisa. What was the agreement?" "With whom? With the salesman, of course." The man chuckled. "We bought the house." "You bought the house?" Lisa's eyes darkened. "No, it can't be. This is some kind of terrible mistake. This is my house. I live here. I've lived here for a long time. The cottage belonged to my late father, then to me. But you sold it to us, didn't you?" The man pulled some yellow paper out of his bag. "Look at this. Your husband signed the contract for you with a power of attorney." Read it. "You gave him the power of attorney." "I did." Lisa echoed. But I didn't know." "Listen to me. I had absolutely no intention of selling the cottage." She shrieked, finally realizing what was happening. John must have been deceived, missiled. Wait, I'll call him now." She pulled out her phone and pressed the call button. There was no dial tone for a long time, and then the cell phone operator announced, in the voice of a mindless mechanical robot, that the subscriber was not answering or temporarily unavailable. Not picking up the phone, probably communications out of the way. "They left this morning, John and Molly. You know Molly has a plane out of New York today," she said to the man who was standing beside her, looking around, looking bossy. "Mason, what's going on here?" His wife came in and also looked at Lisa with surprise. "And who are you exactly?" "I am the owner of this cottage," Lisa told her rather uncertainly. "You were sold it by mistake." "By mistake?" The woman became agitated. "By mistake, you say?" Yes, I'll call the police. What kind of mistake? This isn't a joke, my dear. Here's the deed. Here's the register. This is our house now, so I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. Leave? Lisa was indignant. But we're not going to live here anyway, are we, love? She smiled at Robert. I hope my future husband will buy a house for us. Can we go to the table now? I'm starving. Kathy replied confusedly. Yes, come in. Everything's ready. Kelly looked at the table and sat down at the table. Where do you expect me to go? What do we care? The woman smirked. It's not our concern anymore. Shaking with terror, Lisa dialed Molly and John again and again, but could not reach them. Then, in utter despair, she called William. Hello, William. It's Lisa. Yes. You know, I've had a terrible situation. Some strangers came and said I'd sold them the cottage, but I hadn't. John signed the contract by power of attorney. Someone must have cheated him. Probably the same people who came are kicking me out. Where am I going to go? Who will carry me to the cab, to the apartment? I don't even know who to turn to anymore. Could you come and take me to town? Please, I'll pay. William assured her that he would be there soon and asked her not to worry and to tell the strangers that he would come and take her away within the hour. Another conversation. Nodded the newfound hosts. Wait, of course. What are we, some kind of fiends? And they left the veranda and started to carry bags and boxes from the car. Lisa sat in her wheelchair, swallowing tears and convulsively clutching her pale, skinny hands, breaking, crunching her fingers. Emily, please, she asked the nurse. Would you be so kind as to fetch me my pills? Yes, I know it's not evening yet, but I'm terribly worried, Emily. Bring them, please. After taking the pills, Lisa was able to breathe more freely. The pressure in her chest was gone, and her eyes no longer swam in dark circles. Her head cleared, her eyes grew heavy, and she practically fell asleep sitting in the chair. It seemed like only 5 minutes had passed and William had already arrived. What's going on here? He asked worriedly. Come on, put your arms around my neck. I'll carry you to the car. Don't forget Trishka. Lisa got worried. He mustn't stay here alone. Trish loaded too. And Emily the nurse, who in the meantime had managed to collect some things Lisa needed and left for the city. At the apartment they got another unpleasant surprise. Lisa's keys did not fit the lock, which was shining with a new keyhole on the door, familiar from childhood. What is it? I don't understand anything. Lisa cried out in despair. What is it? Why can't I enter my own apartment? Calm down. William pressed the bell button. We'll take care of it. What do you want? An elderly woman, a complete stranger to Lisa, opened the door on a chain. Who are you here to see? I live here. Lisa shouted and tried to reach forward in her wheelchair and grab the door with her hand, but William intercepted her just in time and put his foot through the gap. Listen, he said to the... Did you tell me everything? The girl looked at David angrily. And now tell your friend how you offered to deceive him and get a tidy sum for it. What? Robert was stunned. David, what is she talking about? Oh, yes. The young man blushed. I suggested that she call Emily and demand that she pay back what she owed. It's your own fault. He lashed out at his friend. He gave some girl all that money. Kelly was your fiancée, but she couldn't even dream of that kind of money. It's my family's money. Robert said, looking at David menacingly. I decide what to do with it. She didn't tell you about the new SUV, about the diamond necklace I bought not too long ago. Was that not enough for her? No, she didn't talk about your gifts. The young man shrank under his friend's scornful gaze. I'm not even upset that you, Kelly, lied to me. Not only did you hide the fact that you lost your job and fell in love with someone else, you opened my eyes. And I'm grateful for that. Even ready to the plane ticket, add the amount for rent for a month, consider it compensation for not making a scandal at the breakup. But that's it. Let your lover support you now. Bye, guys. He got up from the table and headed for the exit. Have a nice stay. Robert, where are you going? David asked him. To a place where I am truly loved, not for money, just because I am me. The young man got into the car. All the way he smiled, imagining that soon he would hug his beloved. Robert? Emily jumped out into the street, noticing the familiar car. What are you doing here? I came to see you, he answered simply. What about your wedding? The girl asked confusedly. There will be one. You will marry me, won't you? He took out of his pocket a ring of white and yellow gold, decorated with small diamonds, and put it on her finger. It's only thanks to you that I realized what true love is. What about your fiancée? She's flying to her lover's house the other day. I'm not even angry with her because I never loved her. I got used to her. She was always there, bright, beautiful, but her beauty was false. You taught me to see a different kind of beauty, a soulful beauty. With you, it's like I've been cured of a serious illness. And now I stand before you and ask you to be my wife. Do you accept? Yes, I do. I love you. Emily threw herself on his neck, hugged him, and there was no need to hide her feelings. She looked at her chosen one with happy eyes. I love you. Robert leaned down and kissed the girl. Jenna looked at them from the window and smiled. The elderly woman crossed the young couple 3 times and whispered softly, God bless.